The morning air was sharp with the scent of pine and damp earth, a chill that cut through wool and leather alike. Dunk pulled his cloak tighter, the coarse fabric worn thin at the shoulders. He rode slowly, Thunder's heavy hooves thudding a steady rhythm on the muddy track. The road was little more than a cart path winding through thickets of oak and elm, the branches overhead still dripping from the night's rain. It had been 3 days since the tourney at Ashford, 3 days of riding north with no clear destination in mind. The memory of the melee was a dull ache in his muscles, a sharper one in his pride. He had fought well enough, he supposed, for a hedge knight with a second-hand shield and a horse more suited to plowing fields than war. But well enough was not enough to win, and his purse was lighter by the cost of a new lance and a night's lodging. Beside him, Egg trudged along, the boy's head bowed against the cold. The lad's shaved scalp was goose-fleshed and pale. "Sir, do you think we'll find another tourney soon?" The question was hopeful, but Dunk heard the weariness beneath it. They had shared a meager breakfast of hard cheese and harder bread, and the boy's belly was likely as empty as his own. Mayhaps, Dunk grunted, not wanting to voice his own doubts. The realm is full of lords celebrating one thing or another. A wedding, a name day, a victory over some bandits. Someone's always looking to host a joust. He said it with more confidence than he felt. The truth was, hedge knights lived on rumor and luck, and both had been in short supply lately. He glanced down at Egg. The boy was a good squire, diligent and clever, but Dunk often wondered if he was doing right by him. A knight should offer more than hunger and hard roads. The forest began to thin, giving way to rolling hills patched with yellow grass. In the distance, Dunk could make out the gray ribbon of a river, and beside it the faint smudge of wood smoke that meant a village, or perhaps an inn. The prospect of a warm fire and a bowl of stew, even a thin one, quickened his pulse. Just then, Thunder's ears pricked forward, and the big destrier let out a soft whicker. From around a bend in the road ahead came the jingle of harness and the creak of wheels. A moment later, a covered wagon drawn by 2 sturdy mules came into view, a man in a broad-brimmed hat walking alongside, a merchant perhaps, or a tinker. Dunk straightened in the saddle, trying to look more like a formidable knight and less like a weary traveler. One never knew what opportunities the road might bring. A soft summer drizzle was falling as Dunk and Egg departed Stony Sept. Dunk was astride his aging warhorse Thunder, while Egg kept pace on the lively young palfrey he called Rain, guiding their pack mule, Maester. Strapped to Maester's back were Dunk's armor and Egg's collection of books, along with their bedrolls, tent, spare clothes, several pieces of hardened salt beef, a half-empty flagon of mead, and 2 water skins. To shield the mule from the weather, Egg had placed his old, wide-brimmed straw hat over the animal's head, having thoughtfully cut holes for Maester's ears. Egg himself wore a nearly identical new hat. As they approached the town's exit, Egg pulled his horse up short. Above the gate, a trader's severed head was mounted on an iron spike. It looked recent, the skin still held a pinkish hue rather than the green of decay, though the crows had already begun their work. The man's lips and cheeks were torn and ragged. His eyes were gone, leaving dark hollows that wept slow, red-tinged trails as rainwater mixed with dried blood. The mouth hung agape, as if still cursing those who passed beneath. Dunk had witnessed such grim displays before. "When I was a lad in King's Landing," he told Egg, "I once stole a head right off a spike. Truth be told, it had been Ferret who'd scrambled up the wall to grab it, after Rafe and Pudding taunted him for lacking nerve. When guards gave chase, Ferret threw it down and Dunk was the one who caught it. Might have been some rebel lord, or a knight-turned-robber. Maybe just a murderer. After a few days in the sun, one head looks much like another." He and his friends had used the grisly trophy to frighten the girls of Flea Bottom, chasing them through narrow lanes and demanding they kiss the head before letting them go. That head received plenty of kisses, as Dunk remembered. No girl in the city could outrun Rafe. Some details, Dunk decided, were better left untold. Ferret, Rafe, and Pudding. A pack of little terrors, with me as the ringleader. They kept the head until the flesh darkened and began to peel away, which took the thrill out of the game. Finally, they barged into a pot shop one evening and tossed the rotting remains into a simmering stew. "The crows always take the eyes first," Dunk mused aloud. Then the cheeks sink in. The skin turns green. He narrowed his gaze, peering up at the spike. "Hold on. I know that face." "You do, sir?" Egg replied quietly. 3 days passed. The hunchback septon preaching against Lord Bloodraven in the square. It came back to him then. The man had been a holy brother, sworn to the Seven even as he spewed treason. His hands are scarlet with a brother's blood, and the blood of his young nephews too. The hunchback had cried to the crowd gathered in the market. A shadow moved at his command to strangle the brave Prince Valar's unborn sons in their mother's womb. Where is our young prince now? Where is his brother, the gentle Materus? Where has good King Daeron gone and the fearless Baelor Breakspear? The grave has claimed them all, yet he endures, this pale bird with a bloody beak, perched on King Aerys's shoulder, whispering poison. The mark of hell is upon his face and in his hollow eye. He has brought us drought, plague, and murder. Rise up, I say, remember our true king across the sea. 7 gods ruled over 7 kingdoms, and the black dragon fathered 7 sons. Stand tall, my lords and ladies. Rise, you valiant knights and steadfast farmers, and overthrow Bloodraven, that vile sorcerer, or risk a curse upon your descendants for all time. Every utterance was an act of rebellion. Still, it was startling to encounter him here, his eye sockets now hollow and empty. That's the man, yes, Dunk confirmed. And one more solid reason to leave this place behind us. He nudged Thunder lightly, and together with Egg, he passed through the gates of Stony Sept, the gentle patter of rain, their only companion. The old riddle asked, how many eyes does Lord Bloodraven possess? 1,000 eyes, and 1. Whispers said the king's hand dabbled in black magic, could wear the face of a one-eyed hound, or even dissolve into a creeping fog. Gaunt gray wolves were said to hunt his enemies, while carrion crows acted as his spies, murmuring secrets only he could hear. Most of these stories were surely just tavern tales, Dunk believed, yet none could deny that Bloodraven's informants were everywhere. Dunk had seen the man himself once in King's Landing. Brynden Rivers was pale as a skeleton, his skin and hair bone white, and his single eye, the other lost long ago to his half-brother Bittersteel on the Redgrass field, was a shocking, vivid red. The dark Wynestein birthmark staining his cheek and neck had given him his name. Once the town faded into the distance, Dunk cleared his throat. A grim affair, beheading a septon. All he did was speak. Words are just air. Some words are air, sir. Others are treason. Egg was thin as a reed, all sharp angles, but he never lacked an opinion. Now you sound like a proper little lordling. Egg took that as the insult it was meant to be. He might have worn a septon's robes, but he was spreading falsehoods, sir. The drought wasn't Lord Bloodraven's doing, and neither was the great spring sickness. That may be true, Dunk replied, but if we start lopping off the heads of every fool and liar, half the towns in the 7 kingdoms would be ghost towns. 6 days later, the rain was a distant memory. Dunk had removed his tunic to bask in the sun's warmth. A soft breeze stirred, cool and sweet, carrying a scent that made him sigh with relief. "Water," he declared. "Do you smell it?" "The lake must be close now. All I smell is Maester, sir. He reeks." Egg gave the mule's lead rope a sharp pull. Maester had paused, as he often did, to nibble at the roadside grass. "There's an old inn near the lake shore," Dunk remembered, recalling a stop there years ago while squiring for Ser Arlan. He claimed they served a fine brown ale. Perhaps we could have a taste while waiting for the ferry. Egg shot him a hopeful glance. "To help the food go down, sir? What food are you imagining?" "A slice of roast?" the boy ventured. "Some duck? A bowl of stew? Whatever they've got, sir." Their last proper meal had been 3 days past. Since then, they'd survived on foraged fruit and strips of ancient salt beef, tough as old leather. It would be good to have real sustenance before turning north. That wall is a terribly long journey. "We could stay the night, too," Egg suggested hopefully. "Does my lord desire a feather bed?" "Straw will suit me perfectly well, sir," said Egg, sounding wounded. "We haven't the coin for beds. We have 22 pennies, 3 stars, 1 stag, and that old chipped garnet, sir." Dunk scratched his ear thoughtfully. "I thought we had 2 silver stags." We did, until you bought the tent. Now we have the one, we'll have none at all if we start lodging at inns. Do you want to share a mattress with some peddler and wake up covered in his fleas? Dunk snorted. Not I. I have fleas of my own, and they don't take kindly to newcomers. We'll sleep under the stars. The stars are fine, Egg conceded, but the ground is awfully hard, sir, and sometimes a man likes a bit of cushion for his head. Pillows are for princes. Egg was as fine a squire as any knight could wish for, but now and then his royal blood would whisper to him. The boy has the dragon in him. Never forget that Dunk knew the taste of poverty all too well. Some in the crowded alleys of Flea Bottom had claimed he had beggar's blood in his veins, when they weren't predicting he'd end his days dancing on a rope. We might scrape together enough for ale and a warm meal, he told the boy, but I won't waste good coin on a bed. Every penny must be saved for the ferry. The last time he'd paid to cross the lake, it was only a handful of coppers, but that was 6 or maybe 7 years past. The price of everything had climbed since. We could just use my boot, Egg suggested, a hopeful glint in his eye. We could, Dunk replied, his tone leaving no room for argument, but we will not. Using the boot was a risk, news would travel, and news always did. His squire's shaved head was no accident. Egg possessed the striking violet eyes of ancient Valyria, and hair that would gleam like spun gold and silver if he let it grow. In these uncertain times across Westeros, letting that hair show would be as foolish as pinning a 3-headed dragon to his chest. Mention that damned boot once more, Dunk warned, and I'll box your ears so hard you'll sail clear across the lake without it. I'd prefer to swim, sir, Egg shot back, grinning. He was a strong swimmer, unlike Dunk. The boy twisted in his saddle, his attention caught. Sir? Riders coming up the road behind us. Can you hear the horses? My ears work just fine, Dunk grumbled. He could see the rising dust cloud, too. A large group and moving fast. Do you think they're outlaws, sir? Egg rose in his stirrups, more curious than frightened. That was his nature. Outlaws would move quieter. Only nobles make this much racket. Dunk jostled his sword hilt to ensure the blade was loose. Still, we'll move off the road and let them pass. There are nobles, and then there are nobles. A little caution never hurt anyone. The highways weren't as safe as they'd been in the days of good King Daron. He and Egg hid themselves behind a thicket of thorn bushes. Dunk hefted his shield and slid his arm through the straps. It was a tall, heavy, kite-shaped thing of pine banded with iron, bought cheap in Stony Sept to replace the one shattered in his fight with the Long Inch. He hadn't found the time to have it painted with his own elm and shooting star, so it still displayed the grim device of its former owner, a gray-hanged man swinging beneath a gallows tree. It was not a sigil he would have chosen. The first riders pounded past moments later, 2 young lordlings on swift coursers. One, on a bay horse, wore an open helm of gilded steel adorned with 3 tall plumes, white, red, and gold. His companion rode a black stallion caparisoned in blue and gold, the trappings fluttering like banners as they raced by, whooping and laughing with their cloaks streaming behind them. A third knight followed at a more measured pace, leading the main column. The party numbered 24, grooms, cooks, servants, men-at-arms, mounted crossbowmen, and a line of drays groaning with armor, tents, and supplies. Slung from this lord's saddle was a shield, dark orange and charged with 3 black castles. Dunk knew that sigil from somewhere. Was it from Ashford Meadow? Or perhaps from some castle where he'd served with Ser Arlen. The hedge knight had taken service at so many keeps. Dunk could scarcely remember them all. The lord, a man with a sour expression and a close-cropped beard of salt and pepper, reined in sharply, his eyes narrowing at the thorn bush. You there in the bushes, show yourself. Behind him, 2 crossbowmen calmly notched their bolts. The rest of the column rode on. Dunk stepped out from the tall grass, his shield on his arm, his right hand resting lightly on his sword pommel. His torso was bare, and his face was coated in a mask of red-brown dust kicked up by the passing horses. He knew he looked rough around the edges, but it was likely his sheer size that gave the other man pause. We mean no trouble, my lord. It's just the 2 of us, myself and my squire. He motioned for Egg to step forward. A squire? Do you dare call yourself a knight? Dunk disliked the way the man was studying him. Those eyes felt like they could strip a man bare. It seemed wise to move his hand away from his sword hilt. I am a hedge knight searching for employment. Every outlaw knight I've ever strung up has claimed the same. Your shield's device might be telling, sir, if you are a sir, a gallows with a hanged man. Are those your arms? No, my lord. The shield needs fresh paint. Why? Did you steal it from a dead man? I paid good coin for it. 3 black castles on an orange field. Where have I seen that before? I am no thief. The lord's eyes were hard as stone. How did you earn that scar on your cheek? A lash from a whip. A knife? Though my face is my own business, my lord. I decide what is my business. By then, the 2 younger knights had circled back to see what was holding up their party. There you are, Gormy, called the rider on the black horse, a slender young man with a handsome, clean-shaven face. His dark hair gleamed to his collar. His doublet was fine dark blue silk trimmed with gold, and across his chest was embroidered a cross with a golden fiddle in 2 quarters and a golden sword in the others. His eyes, a deep blue like his doublet, sparkled with good humor. Alan was worried you'd taken a fall. A feeble excuse, if you ask me. I was ready to leave him in my dust. Who are these 2 ruffians? Asked the rider on the bay horse. Egg stiffened at the insult. You've no right to name us ruffians, my lord. When we saw your dust cloud, we thought you might be bandits. That's the only reason we hid. This is Ser Duncan the Tall, and I'm his squire. The young nobles ignored this as they would the croak of a toad. I do believe that is the largest oaf I have ever laid eyes on, announced the knight with the 3 feathers on his shield. He had a round face under a head of curly honey-dark hair. 7 feet tall if he's an inch, I'd wager. What a splendid crash he'll make when he topples over. Dunk felt the heat rise in his cheeks. You'd lose that bet, he thought, the last time he was measured. Egg's brother Aemon had said he was just an inch under 7 feet. Is that your war horse, Sir Giant? Said the feathered lordling. I suppose we could slaughter it for stew meat. Lord Alan often forgets his manners, the black-haired knight said. You must forgive his rude words, sir? Alan, you will ask Ser Duncan for his pardon. If I must. Will you forgive me, sir? He did not wait for an answer, but turned his bay and trotted down the road. The other lingered. Are you traveling to the wedding, sir? Something in his tone made Dunk want to show deference. He fought the urge and said, We're headed for the ferry, my lord. As are we, but the only lords here are Gormy and that fool who just rode off, Alan Cockshaw. I am a wandering hedge knight like yourself. They call me Sir John the Fiddler. It was the sort of name a hedge knight might pick, but Dunk had never seen any hedge knight dressed, armed or mounted with such richness. The Knight of the Golden Hedge, he thought. You know my name? My squire's egg? Well met, sir. Ride with us to Whitewalls and break a few lances to help Lord Butterwell celebrate his wedding. I'd wager you could give a fine account of yourself. Dunk had not jousted since the tourney at Ashford Meadow. If I could win a few ransoms, we'd eat well on the ride north, he thought, but the older lord with the 3 castles on his shield spoke up. Sir Duncan needs to continue his journey, as do we. John the Fiddler paid the man no mind. I would dearly love to cross swords with you, sir. I've tested my skill against men from many lands, but never one of your stature. It would be a unique challenge, he added with a grin that seemed both friendly and calculating. Was your father a large man as well? I never knew my father, sir. That is a sorrowful thing. My own father was taken from this world far too early. The fiddler then addressed the lord with the 3 castles on his shield. We should invite Sir Duncan to travel with our merry party. We have no need of his kind. Dunk was left speechless. A hedge knight with empty pockets was rarely invited to ride alongside high-born lords. I'd likely have more in common with their stable hands. Judging by the length of their procession, Lord Cockshaw and the fiddler traveled with grooms for their horses, cooks for their meals, squires for their armor, and guards for their protection. Dunk had only Egg. His kind? The fiddler laughed. What kind is that? The exceptionally tall kind? Just look at him. We require strong men. I've often heard it said that a young man with a sword is more valuable than an old man with a title. Fools say that. You know nothing of this stranger. He could be a robber or perhaps one of Lord Bloodraven's informants. I am no one's spy. Dunk stated firmly. "And my lord has no right to speak of me as if I cannot hear, or as if I were already in my grave." Those hard flint-like eyes studied him. "The grave would be a fine place for you, sir. You have my permission to find one." "Do not listen to him," the fiddler urged. "He's a bitter old man, he trusts no one, Gormy. I have a good feeling about this night. Sir Duncan, will you ride with us to Whitewalls?" "My lord, How could he possibly share a campsite with men like these?" "Their servants would erect fine pavilions, their grooms would brush their horses until they shone, and their cooks would serve them capon or roast beef, while Dunk and Egg chewed on tough, salted strips of meat." "I could not, you see," said the Lord of the Three Castles. "He understands his station, and it is not among us." He turned his horse toward the road. "Lord Cockshaw is likely half a league ahead by now. I suppose I must chase the fool down once more." The fiddler offered Dunk an apologetic smile. "Perhaps our paths will cross again." "I hope they do. I would very much enjoy trying my lance against you." Dunk was unsure how to respond. "Good fortune in the lists, sir," he finally said, but Sir John had already wheeled his horse to follow the column. The older lord rode after him. Dunk was relieved to see him go. He had not cared for those stony eyes, nor for Lord Allen's haughty manner. The fiddler had been friendly enough, yet there was something peculiar about him, too. "Two fiddles and two swords on a cross engrailed," he said to Egg as they watched the dust settle from their departure. "What house does that represent?" "None, sir. I have never seen that device in any heraldry roll." Perhaps he is just a hedge knight after all. Dunk himself had invented his own arms at Ashford Meadow, when a puppeteer named Tanzel Too Tall asked what he wanted painted on his shield. Was the older lord related to House Frey? The Freys displayed towers on their shields, and their lands were not far from here. Egg rolled his eyes. "The Frey sigil is two blue towers linked by a bridge on a gray field. Those were three castles, black on orange, sir. Did you see a bridge?" "No." "He does that just to irritate me. And the next time you roll your eyes at me, I'll box your ears so hard they'll stay rolled back in your head forever." Egg looked properly admonished. "I didn't mean—" "Never mind what you meant. Just tell me who he was." "Gorman Peak, the Lord of Starpike." "That's in the Reach, isn't it? Does he truly possess three castles?" "Only on his shield, sir. House Peak once held three castles, but two were forfeited." "How does a man lose two castles?" "You fight for the Black Dragon, sir?" "Oh." Dunk felt foolish. That business again? For 2 centuries, the realm had been ruled by the line of Aegon the Conqueror and his sisters, who united the 7 kingdoms and forged the Iron Throne. Their royal standard bore the 3-headed dragon of House Targaryen, red on black. 16 years passed. A bastard son of King Aegon IV, named Daemon Blackfyre, had risen in rebellion against his true-born brother. Daemon had also used the 3-headed dragon, but he reversed the colors, as many bastards did, a bold and defiant statement that still haunted the land. The rebellion met its bloody end at Redgrass Field, where Daemon and his twin sons fell under a storm of arrows loosed by Lord Bloodraven. Those rebels who surrendered and pledged fealty were granted pardons, though many paid a price in lands, titles, or gold. All were required to yield hostages as surety for their future loyalty. 3 castles, black upon orange. "It comes back to me," Dunk murmured. Sir Arlan seldom spoke of that field, but deep in his cups one night he told of his sister's boy dying there. He could almost catch the scent of sour wine on the old knight's breath, hear the gravel in his voice. Roger of Pennytree was the lad's name. His skull was crushed by a mace swung by a lord bearing 3 castles on his shield. Lord Gorman Peak. Sir Arlan never learned that name, or perhaps he chose not to. By then, Lord Peak, John the Fiddler, and their retinue were merely a fading crimson smudge on the horizon. 16 years had passed. The pretender perished, his followers scattered into exile or granted uneasy forgiveness. "It has nothing to do with me," he told himself firmly. For a time they rode in silence, the only sounds the creak of leather and the lonely calls of marsh birds. After a half-league, Dunk shifted in his saddle. "Butterwell," he mentioned. "His lands are close by?" On the far shore of the lake, sir, Egg replied, ever eager to display his knowledge. Lord Butterwell served as master of coin under King Aegon. King Daeron even named him Hand, though not for long. His arms are green, white, and yellow, sir. The boy paused, then asked, "Is he a friend to your father?" Egg's expression soured. "My father never had any use for him. During the rebellion, Lord Butterwell played a cunning game. His second son fought for the Pretender, while his eldest stood with the king. That way, he was assured a place on the winning side. Lord Butterwell himself did not lift a sword for anyone. Some might name that prudent planning. My father names it cowardice." "Aye, he would," Dunk thought. "Prince Maekar was forged of stern, scornful metal. Our path to the King's Road runs by white walls regardless. Why not let our bellies share in the celebration?" The mere idea made his stomach growl in agreement. "Perhaps some wedding guest will have need of an escort home. You said we were bound for the north, sir. The wall has stood for 8,000 years. It can wait a little longer. It's 1,000 leagues from here, and our purse could stand to gain a few more silvers." Dunk imagined himself astride thunder, charging down that sour old lord with the triple castles on his shield. What a sweet moment that would be. "It was old Ser Arlen's squire who unhorsed you," he could say when the ransom was discussed. "The boy who took the place of the boy you killed. The old man would have cherished that." "You're not thinking of entering the lists, are you, sir?" Egg asked, his tone wary. "Might be it's time I tried." "It is not time, sir." "Maybe it's time I gave your ear a good clout," Dunk grumbled. "He'd only need to win 2 tilts. If he could claim 2 ransoms and pay out but 1, they'd dine like lords for a year. If they hold a melee, I might enter that. His sheer size and brute strength would serve him far better in the chaos of a melee than in the orderly joust. It is not customary to have a melee at a wedding feast, sir. It is customary to have a feast, however. We've a long, lean road ahead. Why not start it with our bellies full for once?" The sun hung low, washing the western sky in flame by the time the lake came into view. Its surface shimmered, a vast sheet of hammered copper reflecting red and gold. Spotting the inn's turrets rising above a stand of willows, Dunk tugged his sweat-stiff tunic back on and halted to splash cool lake water on his face. He scrubbed the road's grime from his skin as best he could and raked damp fingers through his thick, sun-bleached hair. There was little to be done for his formidable size or the scar etching his cheek, but he hoped to look slightly less like a wild hedge knight. The inn was a surprising sprawl of gray timber and turrets, much of it built out over the water on wooden pilings. A plank road crossed the muddy shore to a deserted ferry landing. Opposite, a thatch-roofed stable stood quiet in the gathering dusk. A low stone wall, dry and rough, marked the boundary of the yard, its gate standing wide. Inside, a well and a watering trough offered some relief. "Tend to the animals," Dunk instructed Egg. "But mind, they don't drink their fill all at once. I'll inquire about a meal." The innkeeper was a woman sweeping the front steps. "Here for the crossing?" she asked, without looking up. "You've missed it. Ned won't run the ferry after dark without a full moon to light the way. He'll return at dawn. What's his price?" 3 coppers a head for you, 10 for a horse."
"We have 2 horses and a mule. Mules cost the same as horses." Dunk calculated quickly. 36 coppers in total, a heavier toll than he'd budgeted. "The last time I passed through, it was 2 pennies a man and 6 for a mount." "Take your grievance to Ned, not me," she shrugged. "And if it's a bed you're after, I've none to spare. Lord Shawnee and Costain arrived with all their men. Every corner is claimed. Was Lord Peake among them, the man who killed Ser Arlen's squire?"
"He traveled with Lord Cockshaw and that fellow they called John the Fiddler. Ned ferried that lot across on his last trip." She eyed Dunk's worn gear. "Were you riding with them?" "We shared the road a while. Nothing more." A rich, savory scent wafted from the inn's windows, making Dunk's stomach clench with hunger. "We'd take some of whatever you're cooking if the price is fair." "It's a peppered wild boar," she said, "served with onions, mushrooms, and mashed turnips." "We can forgo the turnips. A few slices of the boar and a tankard of brown ale would suit us. What would that cost?" "And perhaps a spot on your stable floor to sleep." That was clearly the wrong thing to say. Stables are for horses. That's why they're named stables. You're near the size of one, I'll give you that, but I count only 2 legs. She made a shooing motion with her broom. I can't feed the entire realm. The boar and the ale are for my paying guests. I'll not have lords complaining I ran short before they were satisfied. The lake has fish, and you'll find a few other vagabonds camped by the old stumps down shore. Hedge knights, so they claim. Her voice dripped with disbelief. Maybe they'll share a bite. It's no concern of mine. Off with you now. I've work to do? The door shut firmly behind her before Dunk could even ask where these stumps might be. He found Egg perched on the edge of the horse trough, his feet soaking in the water, while he fanned himself with his wide-brimmed hat. "Are they roasting a pig, sir? I can smell it." "Wild boar," Dunk replied gloomily. "But who needs boar when we have our fine salt beef?" Egg grimaced. "Could I please just eat my boots instead, sir? I'll make new boots from the salt beef. It's tougher." "No," said Dunk, fighting a smile. "You can't eat your boots. One more clever word, and you'll taste my knuckles. Get your feet out of that trough." He retrieved his Grethelm from the mule and tossed it underhand to the boy. "Draw water from the well and soak the beef, properly soaked. The salt beef was merely tough instead of tooth-breaking. Ale was best for the task, but water would have to do. And don't use the trough. I've no desire for a hint of your feet in my supper." "My feet would only improve the flavor, sir," Egg said, wiggling his toes, but he obeyed. The other hedge knights were not difficult to locate. Egg spotted the orange glow of their fire through the trees along the lakeshore, and they headed toward it, leading their animals. The boy carried Dunk's water-filled helm carefully, sloshing with each step. By then, the sun had faded to a crimson memory on the horizon. Soon the trees gave way to a clearing that must have once been a grove of weirwoods. Now only a circle of pale stumps and a snarl of bone-white roots remained, ghosts of the trees that stood when the children of the forest held sway. Among the stumps, 2 men huddled near a cook fire, passing a wineskin back and forth. Their mounts grazed peacefully on the grass just past the trees, with their weapons and armor arranged in orderly stacks nearby. A youth sat separate from his 2 companions, leaning against the trunk of a chestnut tree. "Good day to you, sirs," Dunk hailed them warmly, knowing it was never prudent to startle armed men. "I am Ser Duncan the Tall. This is my squire, Egg. Might we share your fire?" A portly man of middle age, dressed in faded but once fine clothing, rose to welcome them. His face was framed by a flamboyant set of ginger whiskers. "Well met, Sir Duncan. You are certainly a sizable fellow. And most welcome. As is your boy, Egg, was it?" "What manner of name is that, if I may ask?" "A brief one, sir," Egg replied. He knew well enough not to reveal that Egg was a shortening of Aegon to strangers. "Quite so. And what befell your hair?" "Rootworms," Dunk thought silently. Tell him it was rootworms. That was the safest tale, the one they used most often, though sometimes the boy was inclined toward childish mischief. "I shaved it, sir. I intend to keep it shorn until I've earned my spurs. A worthy vow. I am Sir Kyle, called the Cat of Misty Moor. Beneath that chestnut rests Sir Glendon Ball, and here stands the excellent Sir Maynard Plum." Egg's attention sharpened at that name. "Plum, are you related to Lord Viserys Plum, sir?" "Distantly," admitted Sir Maynard, a tall, gaunt man with a stoop and long, straight hair the color of pale flax. "Though I doubt his lordship would acknowledge it. One might say he is of the sweet plums, while I am of the sour." His cloak was a faded purple, frayed at the edges and poorly dyed, fastened at the shoulder with a moonstone brooch as large as a hen's egg. Otherwise, he wore dun-colored rough-spun and stained brown leather. "We have some salt beef," Dunk offered. "Sir Maynard has a sack of apples," added Kyle the cat. "And I've brought pickled eggs and onions. Why, together we've the makings of a fine meal. Sit, sir. We've a fine selection of stumps for your comfort. We'll be waiting here until mid-morning, unless I'm mistaken. There's only the one ferry, and it can't carry us all at once. The lords and their retinues must cross first." "Help me with the horses," Dunk said to Egg. Together they unsaddled Thunder, Rain, and Maester. Only after the animals were fed, watered, and secured for the night did Dunk accept the wineskin Sir Maynard offered him. "Even sour wine surpasses none at all," remarked Kyle the cat. "We'll taste better vintages at Whitewalls. Lord Butterwell is reputed to have the finest wines north of the Arbor. He served once as the king's hand, as his grandfather did before him, and he's said to be a devout man besides and exceedingly wealthy. His wealth all comes from cows, Maynard Plum said dryly. He ought to take a swollen udder for his sigil. These Butterwells have milk in their veins, and the Freys are no better. This will be a wedding of cattlemen and toll-takers, one batch of coin-clinkers uniting with another. When the Black Dragon rose, this Lord of Cows sent one son to Daemon and another to Daeron to ensure a Butterwell was on the winning side. Both died on the Redgrass field, and his youngest perished last spring. That's the reason for this new marriage. Unless this fresh wife gives him a son, the Butterwell name ends with him. As it deserves, Sir Glendon Bald declared, giving his sword another firm stroke with the whetstone. The sound was sharp and deliberate. The warrior has no love for cravens. The sheer contempt in his tone made Dunk study the youth more closely. Sir Glendon's garments were of decent material but well worn and mismatched, having the appearance of hand-me-downs. Tufts of dark brown hair escaped from beneath his iron half-helm. The lad was stocky and solid, with narrow, close-set eyes, broad shoulders, and muscular arms. His eyebrows were as shaggy as a pair of well-fed caterpillars, his nose was bulbous, and his chin had a stubborn, pugnacious set. He was young, perhaps 16, certainly no older than 18. Dunk might have taken him for a squire had Sir Kyle not accorded him the title of Sir. The boy's cheeks were dotted with pimples where a beard ought to be, and he kept his gaze fixed on his blade with an intensity that bordered on theatrical, as if he were performing for an audience of ghosts. Dunk turned to the man. "How long have you carried the title of knight?" "Long enough," came the reply. 6 months when the moon next changes. Sir Morgan Dunstable of Tumbler's Falls bestowed the honor, with 24 souls as witness, but my training began at birth. I was on horseback before I could walk properly, and I knocked a grown man's tooth loose before I'd lost any of my own. My name will be made at Whitewalls, and the dragon's egg will be mine." "A dragon's egg? That's the champion's prize?" "Truly. The last dragon had died 50 years past. Sir Arlen had spoken of seeing a clutch once, describing them as hard as stone yet wondrous to behold. How would Lord Butterwell come to possess such a thing?" Sir Maynard Plum answered. "King Aegon presented it to his grandsire after a night's stay at the old castle." "Was it a reward for some act of bravery?" Dunk asked. Sir Kyle let out a short laugh. "Some might name it that. The tale goes the old Lord Butterwell had 3 young, unwed daughters when the king came to visit. By sunrise, all 3 carried royal bastards, a rather productive night's work by all accounts." Dunk had heard similar stories before. Aegon the Unworthy was said to have bedded half the maidens in the 7 kingdoms, leaving a trail of bastards. Worse, the old king had legitimized every one of them on his deathbed, from the lowborn to the high. "We'd all be sons of old King Aegon if half these tales held truth, and who's to say we aren't?" Sir Maynard quipped lightly. "You should ride with us to Whitewalls, Sir Duncan," Sir Kyle urged. "Your size alone will draw a lord's eye. You might find honorable service." "I know I will. Joffrey Caswell, Lord of Bitterbridge, will be at the wedding. When he was but 3, I carved his first sword from pine to fit his small hand. In my younger days, my steel was sworn to his father. Was that blade carved from pine as well?" Sir Maynard inquired. Kyle the cat laughed good-naturedly. "That one was true steel, I assure you. I would be glad to wield it once more in the centaur's service. Sir Duncan, even if you choose not to joust, join us for the wedding feast. There will be singers and musicians, jugglers and acrobats, even a company of comic dwarfs for entertainment." Dunk's expression grew thoughtful. "Egg and I have a long road ahead. We travel north to Winterfell. Lord Baron Stark is gathering swords to drive the Krakens from his shores for good." "Too cold for my blood up there," said Sir Maynard. "If Kraken slaying is your aim, look west. The Lannisters are building a fleet to strike the Iron Men on their own islands. That is how you end Dagon Greyjoy. Fighting him on land is pointless. He just retreats to the sea. You must defeat him upon the waves." The logic sounded sound, yet the thought of battling Iron Men at sea held little appeal for Dunk. He remembered a taste of it aboard the White Lady sailing from Dorne to Oldtown when he donned his armor to help the crew fend off raiders. That clash had been brutal and chaotic, and once he'd nearly toppled over the side into the dark water, a fall that would have meant his end. The memory alone was enough to tighten his grip on his tankard. The throne should take a lesson from Stark and Lannister, Sir Kyle declared. At least they act. What do the Targaryens do? King Aerys hides among his scrolls, Prince Rhaegal dances unclothed through the halls of the Red Keep, and Prince Maekar sulks in his gloom at Summerhall. Ig was poking at the campfire with a stick, sending a shower of sparks spiraling into the night. Dunk felt a flicker of pride, seeing the boy ignore the mention of his father's name. Perhaps he's finally learning to mind that tongue of his. For my part, I place the blame on Bloodraven, Sir Kyle continued. He serves as hand, yet he does nothing while the Krakens spread fire and fear along the Sunset Coast. Sir Maynard shrugged. His eye is fixed on Tyrosh, where Bittersteel sits in exile, conspiring with the sons of Daemon Blackfire. He keeps the king's fleet anchored nearby to prevent any crossing, Sir Kyle observed. That may be so, he continued, but plenty would cheer for Bittersteel's return. Bloodraven is the source of all our troubles, the pale parasite eating away at the kingdom's heart. Dunk scowled, recalling the bent-back Septon from Stony Sept. Words like that can get a man killed. Some would call that treasonous talk. How can speaking truth be treason? Kyle the Cat retorted. In King Daeron's time, a man could speak freely without fear. Now? He spat dismissively. Bloodraven placed King Aerys on the Iron Throne, but for how long? Aerys is frail, and when he dies, the fight for the crown between Lord Rivers and Prince Maekar will stain the realm red, the hand against the rightful heir. You overlook Prince Rhaegal, my friend, Sir Maynard gently corrected. He stands next in line after Aerys, not Maekar, with his children following. Rhaegal's mind is feeble. I wish him no harm, but the man is as good as gone, and those twins of his along with him. The only question is whether they'll fall to Maekar's mace or Bloodraven's dark arts. Seven save us, Dunk thought, just as Egg's voice piped up, sharp and clear. Prince Maekar is Prince Rhaegal's own brother. He loves him dearly. He would never hurt him or his children. Quiet, boy, Dunk rumbled. These knights have no interest in your opinions. I can speak if I wish. No, Dunk said firmly. You cannot. That tongue of yours will get you killed one day, and likely take me with you. That salt beef has soaked long enough, I reckon. A piece for each of our companions, and be quick about it. Egg flushed, and for a brief moment, Dunk feared defiance. Instead, the boy settled for a sulky glare, simmering with the unique fury of an 11-year-old. Aye, sir, he muttered, fishing in the bottom of Dunk's helm. His shaved head gleamed crimson in the firelight as he handed out the tough meat. Dunk took his portion and gnawed at it. The soaking had merely turned the wood-like strip into leather. He sucked on one end, tasting the salt and stubbornly refusing to picture the roast boar back at the inn, sizzling on its spit and dripping rich fat. As twilight deepened, flies and biting midges swarmed from the lake. The flies bothered the horses, but the midges had a taste for men. The only defense was to huddle near the flames, breathing smoke. Cook or be eaten alive, Dunk thought gloomily. A fine choice for a hedge knight. He scratched his arms and edged closer. The wineskin came around again. The vintage was sharp and potent. Dunk took a long pull before passing it on, while the Cat of Misty Moor launched into a tale of saving the Lord of Bitterbridge during the Backfire Rebellion. When Lord Armyn's standard-bearer fell, I leapt from my saddle with rebels closing in all around us. Sir, Glendon Ball interrupted, who were these rebels you speak of? The Blackfire supporters, I meant to say? Firelight glinted on the steel in Sir Glendon's grip. The pockmarks on his face burned like fresh wounds, and his whole body was taut as a drawn bowstring. My father fought for the Black Dragon. Here we go again. Dunk sighed inwardly. Red or black? Was a question that only ever bred conflict. I'm certain Sir Kyle meant no slight to your father. None at all, Sir Kyle assured. The Red Dragon and the Black is an old story. No reason for us to quarrel over it now, lad. We're all hedge brothers here. Sir Glendon seemed to measure the cat's words, searching for mockery. Daemon Blackfire was no traitor. The old king himself gave him the sword. He saw Daemon's worth, bastard birth and all. Why else place Blackfyre in his hand instead of Daeron's? He meant for him to have the kingdom too. Daemon was the better man. A sudden silence fell. The only sounds were the soft crackle of the fire and the distant lap of water. Dunk felt midges crawling on his neck and swatted them away, his eyes fixed on Egg, silently pleading with the boy to hold his tongue. "I was only a lad when the battle at Red Grass Field was fought," he spoke up, breaking the silence that had settled over the group. "I served as a squire for a knight who rode with the Red Dragon, and later I attended another who fought beneath the Black Dragon's banner. There was courage to be found on both sides of that field." "Brave men," repeated Kyle the cat, his voice lacking its usual vigor. "Heroes, truly!" Glendon Ball then rotated his shield, displaying the emblem painted upon it, a fiery sphere of red and yellow blazing against a field of black. "I carry the blood of a hero in my veins." "You are Fireball's son," Egg stated. For the first time, they witnessed a smile touch Sir Glendon's lips. Sir Kyle studied the young man intently. "How can that be? What is your age?" Quentin Ball fell. "Before I drew my first breath," Sir Glendon concluded, "yet he lives again through me." He drove his sword back into its sheath with a decisive motion. "All of you will see the proof at Whitewalls when I claim the dragon's egg as my rightful prize." The following day confirmed Sir Kyle's earlier prediction. Ned's ferry was far too small to carry everyone across at once, forcing Lords Costain and Shawnee, along with their retinues, to go first. This process demanded several trips, each consuming over an hour. They battled the mudflats, maneuvering horses and wagons down the planks, loading them onto the boat and unloading everything again on the opposite shore. The two lords further delayed matters by erupting into a heated argument over who held greater precedence. Shawnee was older, but Costain believed his lineage was superior. Dunk could do nothing but wait and suffer in the sweltering heat. "We could go first if you'd let me use my boot," Egg suggested. "We could," Dunk replied, "but we will not, Lord Costain, and Lord Shawnee arrived before us. And remember, they are lords." Egg pulled a face. "Rebel lords." Dunk looked down at him, his brow furrowed. "What are you talking about?" "They supported the Black Dragon." "Well, Lord Shawnee did, and Lord Costain's father. Aemon and I used to refight the whole battle on Maester Meliquin's green table with painted soldiers and little banners. Costain's arms show a silver chalice on black beside a black rose on gold. That banner flew on the left flank of Daemon's host. Shawnee fought with Bittersteel on the right and nearly died from his wounds." "That's old, dead history. They are here now, aren't they?" "So they bent the knee, and King Daeron granted them pardon." "Yes, but—" Dunk gently pinched the boy's lips together. "Hold your tongue." Egg held his tongue. No sooner had the final boatload of Shawnee's men pushed off than Lord and Lady Smallwood arrived at the landing with their own entourage, forcing another wait. The brief fellowship of the road had clearly not survived the night. Sir Glendon kept to himself, irritable and withdrawn. Judging it would be midday before they could board, Kyle the cat drifted away to attempt currying favor with Lord Smallwood, with whom he claimed a slight acquaintance. Sir Maynard passed the time swapping tales with the innkeeper. "Keep your distance from that one," Dunk cautioned Egg. Something about Plum unsettled him. For all we know, he could be a robber knight. The warning only seemed to make Sir Maynard more intriguing to Egg. "I've never met a robber knight. Do you think he plans to steal the dragon's egg?" "Lord Butterwell will have that egg well guarded, I am certain," Dunk said, scratching at the midge bites on his neck. An unexpected thought struck him. "Do you suppose he might display it at the feast? I would dearly like to see one for myself." "I would show you mine, sir, but it is back at Summerhall." "Yours? Your dragon's egg?" Dunk stared down at the boy, uncertain if this was some jest. "Where did you get such a thing?" "From a dragon, sir. They placed it in my cradle when I was born." "Do you want a cloud on the ear?" "There are no dragons." "No, but the eggs remain. The last dragon left a clutch of 5, and they keep more on Dragonstone, old ones from before the dance. My brothers all have them as well. Arion's looks as if it's made of gold and silver, with veins of fire running through it. Mine is white and green, all swirly. Your dragon's egg." The idea that they had placed one in his cradle lingered in Dunk's mind, a strange and fantastical claim. Dunk had grown so accustomed to Egg's presence that he often overlooked the fact that Aegon was royalty. Naturally, they would have placed a dragon egg in his cradle. "Just make sure you don't talk about this egg where anyone might overhear," he cautioned. "I'm not a fool, sir," Egg whispered, lowering his voice. "The dragons will come back one day. My brother Daron has seen it in his dreams, and King Aerys found it foretold in a prophecy. Perhaps it will be my egg that cracks open. Wouldn't that be amazing? Would it, really?" Dunk remained skeptical, though Egg held no such doubts. "Aemon and I used to imagine our eggs would be the ones to hatch. If they did, we could soar through the clouds on dragonback, just like the first Aegon and his sisters." "Sure. And if every other knight in the kingdom dropped dead, I'd end up Lord Commander of the Kingsguard. If these eggs are so incredibly valuable, why is Lord Butterwell handing one out as a prize? To prove to everyone how wealthy he is? Maybe." Dunk rubbed his neck and looked toward Sir Glendon Ball, who was adjusting his saddle straps while waiting for the ferry. "That horse is a lost cause." Sir Glendon's mount was a tired, bony creature, too small and far too old. "What's the story with his father? Why did they call him Fireball?" "Because of his fiery temper and that bright red hair. Sir Quentin Ball served as master-at-arms in the Red Keep. He trained my father and my uncles, even the great bastards, in combat. King Aegon had promised him a spot in the Kingsguard, so Fireball made his wife join the Silent Sisters. But by the time an opening appeared, King Aegon had passed, and King Daron appointed Sir Willem Wyld instead. According to my father, Fireball was just as influential as Bittersteel in persuading Daemon Blackfyre to seize the crown, and he helped him escape when Daron sent the Kingsguard to arrest him. Later, Fireball slew Lord Lefford outside Lannisport and sent the Grey Lion scurrying back into the Rock. At the Mandel Crossing, he defeated Lady Penrose's sons one after another. They say he let the youngest live as a mercy to the boy's mother. That was a knightly gesture, Dunk conceded. "Did Sir Quentin fall on the Redgrass field?" "Before that, sir," Egg answered. "Some common archer, no one even knows his name, shot an arrow through his throat while he was stopping by a stream for a drink. Those everyday folk can turn dangerous once they decide to start killing nobles and legends." Dunk spotted the ferry inching its way across the lake. "Here it comes. It's crawling. Are we actually going to White Walls, sir?" "Why not? I'd like to get a look at this dragon's egg." Dunk grinned. "If I win the tournament, we'd each have a dragon's egg." Egg shot him a skeptical glance. "What? Why are you staring at me like that?" "I could explain, sir," the boy said with exaggerated seriousness, "but I really should practice keeping my mouth shut." The hedge knights were seated far from the high table, nearer to the doors than to the Lord's dais. White Walls was relatively new for a castle, built just 40 years prior by the current Lord's grandfather. Locals nicknamed it the Milk House because its walls, keeps, and towers were constructed from smooth white stone, hauled at great cost from quarries in the Vale. Inside, floors and pillars of creamy white marble, streaked with gold, gleamed under the light. The rafters overhead were carved from the pale wood of weirwoods. Dunk couldn't fathom the fortune it must have taken. The hall itself wasn't as vast as others he'd seen, though. At least they let us inside, he thought, settling on the bench between Sir Maynard Plum and Kyle the cat. Though uninvited, all three had been readily welcomed to the feast. It was considered bad luck to deny a knight hospitality on a wedding day. Young Sir Glendon faced more difficulty, however. "Fireball never fathered a son," Dunk overheard Lord Butterwell's steward declare loudly. The young man retorted with passion, and the name Sir Morgan Dunstable came up repeatedly, but the steward stood firm. Sir Glendon's hand went to his sword, and a dozen guards stepped forward with spears leveled. For a tense moment, violence seemed inevitable. It was the arrival of a broad-shouldered, fair-haired knight named Kirby Pym that diffused the standoff. From his vantage, Dunk was too distant to catch the words, but he watched as Pym threw a companionable arm around the steward's shoulders, speaking low with a chuckle. The steward's expression tightened before he turned back to Sir Glendon and delivered a quiet remark that flushed the young knight's face a deep, angry crimson. "He looks ready to weep or draw steel," Dunk observed. Eventually the boy was permitted entry into the castle's great hall. Young Egg, however, was not granted the same courtesy. When Dunk attempted to bring the lad inside, a junior steward sniffed. The hall is reserved for lords and knights. Squires, grooms, and men-at-arms will take their meals in the inner yard. If they had the faintest idea of his true lineage, Dunk thought wryly they'd be scrambling to place him on a velvet cushion atop the dais. The other squires gathered outside did not inspire confidence. A handful were boys' eggs age, but the majority were older, hardened men who had traded the dream of knighthood for the security of service, if they ever had a choice at all. Becoming a knight demanded more than courage and skill. It required the heavy price of a horse, armor, and a proper sword. "Mind your words," Dunk cautioned Egg before leaving him among them. "These are seasoned men. They won't tolerate cheek. Sit, eat, and listen. You might actually learn something." For himself, Dunk was simply relieved to escape the blistering sun with a cup of wine at hand and the prospect of a full meal. Even a hedge knight tires of gnawing each mouthful for what feels like an hour. The fare below the salt would be humble, but there would be plenty of it, more than enough for Dunk. Yet, as the old man often said, a peasant's pride is a lordling's shame. "This cannot be where I belong," Sir Glendon Ball protested heatedly to the understeward. He had changed into a clean doublet for the feast. An elegant though faded piece trimmed with gold lace at the cuffs and collar, the red chevron and white plates of House Ball displayed proudly on the chest. "Do you know who my father was?" "A noble knight and a mighty lord, I am certain," replied the understeward with practiced indifference. "The same could be said for many here. Please take your seat or take your leave, sir. It makes no difference to me." In the end, the young knight sullenly accepted a place below the salt with the rest of them. The vast, pale hall was steadily filling as more knights pressed onto the benches. The crowd was larger than Dunk had expected, and judging by the varied garb and dusty travelers, some had journeyed from distant corners of the realm. He and Egg hadn't been among so many lords and knights since the tourney at Ashford Meadow, and there was no telling who else might appear. "We should have remained in the hedgerows, sleeping beneath the oaks. If I am recognized, the arrival of a server placing a loaf of coarse black bread before each man provided a welcome distraction. Dunk split the loaf lengthwise, hollowed out the bottom half to serve as a trencher, and ate the top. It was stale, yet compared to his leathery salt beef, it tasted like sweet custard. At least it didn't require soaking in ale or water to be chewable. "Sir Duncan, you seem to be drawing quite a bit of notice," Sir Maynard Plum remarked as Lord Virwell and his retinue processed past them toward the high tables. "Those maids up on the dais can scarcely look away. I'd wager they've never laid eyes on a man of your size. Even seated, you tower half a head above anyone else in the hall." Dunk hunched his shoulders, a familiar discomfort settling in. He was accustomed to stares, but that didn't mean he enjoyed them. "Let them look. That's the old ox down near the dais," Sir Maynard continued, nodding toward a bulky figure. "They call him a giant of a man. But if you ask me, it's his belly that's truly enormous." "You're an absolute giant compared to him," someone remarked. "Truly, sir," agreed a man seated nearby, his complexion sallow and his expression somber, dressed in muted shades of gray and green. His eyes were narrow and clever, set close beneath finely arched brows. A trimmed black beard accentuated his mouth, compensating for his thinning hair. On a field like this, your stature alone ought to make you one of the most daunting challengers. Rumors had circulated that the brood of Bracken might appear, mentioned another knight farther along the bench. "I doubt it," countered the man in green and gray. "This is merely a celebratory joust for his lordship's wedding. A bit of sport in the yard to honor the sport in the bedchamber. Hardly worth the effort for someone of Otho Bracken's reputation." Sir Kyle, known as the Cat, took a sip of wine. "I'd wager Lord Butterwell won't compete either. He'll likely cheer his champions from the comfort of his shaded box." "Then he'll watch his champions fall," Sir Glendon Ball declared boldly, "and in the end he'll be handing that dragon egg to me." "Sir Glendon is Fireball's son," Sir Kyle explained to the newcomer. "Might we know your name, sir?" Sir Uthor Underleaf. "Son of no one noteworthy." Underleaf's attire was of fine fabric, neat and well-maintained, though modest in design. A silver brooch shaped like a snail secured his cloak. "If your lance proves as sharp as your words, Sir Glendon, you might even give this large fellow a real challenge." Sir Glendon shot a glance at Dunk as wine was poured. "If we meet, He'll fall. His size means nothing to me. Dunk watched his own cup being filled. I'm more skilled with a sword than a lance, he confessed, and better still with a battle axe. Will there be a melee here? His build and power would serve him well in a chaotic fight where he felt confident holding his own. Jousting was a different matter entirely. A melee? At a wedding? Sir Kyle sounded appalled. That would be improper. Sir Maynard chuckled softly. Any married man could tell you a marriage is its own kind of melee. Sir Uthor joined in the mild laughter. Only the joust, I'm afraid, but aside from the dragon's egg, Lord Butterwell has promised 30 gold dragons to the runner-up in the final tilt and 10 each to the knights defeated in the preceding round. 10 dragons wasn't so bad. That sum could buy a gentle palfrey sparing thunder for battle alone. It could purchase a proper suit of plate for Egg and a knight's pavilion embroidered with Dunk's personal sigil. It would mean feasts of roast goose, ham, and pigeon pie. There are also ransoms to be claimed by those who win their matches, Ser Uthor added, shaping his bread trencher. And I've heard whispers that some guests place heavy wagers on the outcomes. Lord Butterwell himself avoids risks, but among his company are men who bet quite boldly. No sooner had he spoken than Ambrose Butterwell made his entrance, greeted by a trumpet fanfare from the musicians' gallery. Dunk rose with the others as Butterwell escorted his young bride down a patterned Myrish carpet toward the high table. Arm in arm. The girl was 15 and newly come into womanhood, her lord husband 50 and recently widowed. She was all youthful bloom, while he was faded and gray. Her bridal cloak flowed behind her, woven in bright candy stripes of green, white, and yellow. It looked so thick and warm, Dunk wondered how she endured it. Lord Butterwell appeared equally burdened, with heavy jowls and thinning, pale hair. The bride's father followed closely, holding the hand of his young son. Lord Frey of the Crossing was a slender man, elegant in blue and gray. His heir a slight boy of 4 with a runny nose. Lords Costain and Risley came next with their wives, who were Butterwell's daughters from his first marriage. Frey's daughters followed with their own husbands. Then came Lord Gorman Peak, Lord Smallwood and Shawnee, various lesser lords and landed knights. Among them Dunk spotted John the Fiddler and Alan Cockshaw. Lord Alan already seemed deep in his cups, though the feast had scarcely begun. By the time the last of the guests had ambled up to the platform, the head table was packed as tightly as the lower benches. Lord Butterwell and his new wife were settled upon plush cushions within a shared throne of golden oak, while the other notables took their places in high-backed chairs adorned with intricate carvings. Behind them, 2 massive banners draped from the ceiling beams, the blue towers of House Frey against a gray field, and the rippling green, white, and yellow of the Butterwell sigil. The duty of the first toast fell to Lord Frey. "To the king," he declared. Sir Glendon extended his cup over the water basin. Dunk tapped his own goblet against it, and then against Sir Uthor's and those of the others nearby. They all drank. "To Lord Butterwell, our generous host," Frey announced next. "May the gods grant him a long life and a house full of sons." Another round was drunk. "To Lady Butterwell, the blushing bride, my beloved daughter, may she be blessed with fertility." Lord Frey offered the girl a knowing grin. "I expect a grandson before the next turn of the seasons. Twins would please me even more, so churn that butter well tonight, my dear." Laughter echoed through the hall, and the guests drank once more. The wine was a deep, sweet red. Then Lord Frey called out, "I give you the king's hand. Brynden Rivers, may the crone's lantern guide him to wise counsel." He raised his goblet high and drank, joined by Lord Butterwell, his bride, and the rest on the dais. Down among the common benches, Sir Glendon inverted his cup, letting the wine spill onto the rushes. "A pity to waste decent wine," remarked Maynard Plum. "I do not toast kinslayers," Sir Glendon stated flatly. "Lord Bloodraven is a sorcerer and a base-born turncloak." "Born a bastard, true," Sir Uthor noted calmly, but his royal father legitimized him on his deathbed. He drank deeply, as did Sir Maynard and many others throughout the hall. Nearly as many set their cups down untouched or turned them over like Sir Glendon. Dunk's own cup felt suddenly weighty. "How many eyes does Lord Bloodraven have?" the old riddle asked. "1,000 eyes, and one," the toast continued, "some offered by Lord Frey and some by other lords." They drank to young Lord Tully, Lord Butterwell's liege who had sent his regrets. They drank to the health of Leo Longthorn, Lord of Highgarden, who was said to be fading. They drank to the memory of valiant men fallen in battle. I, Dunk, thought, his own memory stirring. I'll gladly drink to that. The final toast was raised by Sir John the Fiddler. To my courageous brothers, I know they are watching with joy tonight. Dunk hadn't planned to drink so much with the joust ahead, but the cups were refilled after every salute, and he discovered a deep thirst. Never turn down a cup of wine or a horn of ale, Sir Arlen had advised him once. You might not see another for a year. It would have been rude not to honor the bride and groom, he reasoned, and risky not to drink to the king in his hand, with so many unknown eyes upon him. Thankfully, the fiddler's toast was the last. Lord Butterwell heaved himself up to thank everyone for attending and to promise exciting contests the next day. Let the feasting commence. At the high table they served a suckling pig, a peacock roasted in its full feathers, and a giant pike coated in crushed almonds. None of those delicacies made it to the lower tables. Instead of suckling pig, they received salt pork, softened in almond milk and seasoned with pepper. In place of peacock, there were capons, roasted to a crisp brown and stuffed with onions, herbs, mushrooms, and chestnuts. Instead of pike, they ate flaky pieces of cod baked in a pastry shell, served with a rich brown sauce Dunk couldn't identify. There was also peas porridge, buttered turnips, carrots glazed with honey, and a pungent white cheese that reminded Dunk powerfully of Bennis of the Brown Shield. He ate heartily, though part of his mind worried about what Egg was getting to eat out in the yard. Just in case, he tucked half a capon into his cloak pocket, along with some bread and a bit of the strong-smelling cheese. As they dined, pipes and fiddles played lively melodies, and the conversation shifted to the next day's jouster. Franklin Frey was a respected figure along the Green Fork, according to Uthor Underleaf, who appeared quite knowledgeable about the local champions. That was him up on the dais, the bride's uncle. Lucas Nayland had traveled down from Flag's Mire and was not to be underestimated, nor should Sir Mortimer Boggs from Crackclaw Point be overlooked. Beyond those, the tourney promised to be a contest of household knights and local legends. Among them, Kirby Pym and Galtrey the Green stood out, though neither could truly rival Lord Butterwell's good son, the notorious Black Tom Heddle. A truly unpleasant character, by all accounts. Rumor had it, he secured the hand of the Lord's eldest daughter by eliminating 3 other suitors, and he was even said to have once unhorsed the Lord of Casterly Rock himself. Young Lord Tybolt? Inquired Sir Maynard. No, the old gray lion, the one who passed in the spring. That was the common refrain for those lost during the Great Spring Sickness. He died in the spring. Tens of thousands had, including a king and 2 young princes. Do not forget Sir Buford Bulwer, interjected Kyle the cat. The old ox cut down 40 men on the Redgrass field, and every year that number seems to grow, Sir Maynard remarked dryly. Bulwer's time has passed. Just look at him. Over 60, soft around the middle, and his right eye is nearly blind. There's no need to scan the hall for your champion, a voice declared from behind Dunk. You're looking at him, good sirs? Feast your eyes. Dunk turned to find Sir John the Fiddler standing over him, a faint, knowing smile on his lips. His white silk doublet featured absurdly long lagged sleeves lined with red satin, the points drooping well past his knees. A heavy silver chain adorned his chest, set with large dark amethysts that mirrored the unusual shade of his eyes. That chain alone is worth more than everything I possess, Dunk thought. The wine had flushed Sir Glendon's cheeks and made his pimples appear more inflamed. And who are you to make such boasts? They call me John the Fiddler? Are you a musician or a warrior? It happens. I can make a sweet song with either a lance or a resigned bow, he replied airily. Every wedding needs a singer, and every tourney needs its mystery knight. May I join you? Lord Butterwell was kind enough to seat me on the dais, but I find I prefer the company of my fellow hedge knights to that of plump, perfumed ladies and weary old men. The fiddler gave Dunk a familiar clap on the shoulder. Be a good fellow and scoot over, Sir Duncan. Dunk obliged, moving down the bench. You've missed the food, sir. No matter. I know the way to Butterwell's kitchens. There's still wine left, I trust. The fiddler carried a scent of oranges and limes with a subtle, unfamiliar spice underneath. Nutmeg, perhaps. Dunk wouldn't know. What did he know of nutmeg? Your boasting is in poor taste, Sir Glendon told the newcomer. Truly? Then I must beg your forgiveness, sir. I would never wish to give offense to any son of the legendary Fireball. The statement clearly caught the young knight off guard. You know who I am? Your father's son, I should hope? Look, said Sir Kyle the cat. The wedding pie. 6 kitchen boys were maneuvering it through the doors on a wide, wheeled cart. The pie was enormous, with a brown, crusty top, and strange noises, squeaks, squawks, and thumps emanated from within. Lord and Lady Butterwell descended from the dais to meet it, a sword in hand. When they cut it open, a chaotic flock of 100 birds erupted into the hall. At other weddings, Dunk had seen such pies contained only doves or songbirds, but this one released a riotous mix: blue jays and skylarks, pigeons and doves, mockingbirds and nightingales, small brown sparrows, and even a single, brilliantly red parrot. 1 in 20 sorts of birds, Sir Kyle observed with appreciation. 1 in 20 sorts of bird droppings, Sir Maynard countered flatly. You have no poetry in your soul, sir. You have something rather less poetic on your shoulder. Sir Kyle sniffed, brushing off his tunic. This is the proper way to fill a pie. The pie symbolizes the marriage, and a true marriage contains many things: joy and sorrow, pain and pleasure, love, desire, and loyalty. It is only fitting, therefore, that it holds birds of many kinds. No man ever truly knows what a new wife will bring him, someone mused at the table. Her affection, I should hope, Plum replied with a dry chuckle, or else what's the point of it all? Dunk pushed his chair back, the legs scraping against the stone floor. I believe I need a bit of air. In truth, he needed to relieve himself, but among such fine company it was more polite to speak of fresh breezes. You'll excuse me. Do hurry back, sir, called the fiddler after him. The jugglers are still to perform, and you wouldn't wish to miss the bedding ceremony. Outside, the night wind washed over him like the breath of some great, slumbering creature. The packed earth of the yard seemed to shift under his boots, or perhaps it was he who swayed. Tourney lists had been raised in the center of the outer yard with a 3-tiered wooden stand built against the walls, so Lord Butterwell and his noble guests could watch in shade and comfort. At each end of the field, tents stood ready for knights to arm themselves, racks of lances waiting beside them. When a gust lifted the banners, Dunk caught the sharp scent of whitewash from the tilting barrier. He meant to find the inner ward, to seek out Egg and send the boy to enter his name in the lists. A squire's duty, but Whitewalls was a maze to him, and soon he was lost. He stumbled near the kennels, where the hounds caught his scent and set to barking and howling. They'd like to tear my throat out, he thought, or maybe they just smelled the capon I tucked in my cloak. He turned back, passing the sept, where a woman dashed by breathless with laughter, a bald knight staggering clumsily after her. The man kept tripping until finally the woman had to return and help him to his feet. I ought to slip inside and pray to the 7 to match me with that knight first thing tomorrow, Dunk considered, but it felt impious. What he truly needed was a privy, not a prayer. Spotting some bushes beneath a flight of pale stone steps, he decided they would serve. He fumbled his way behind them and unlaced his breeches, his bladder near to bursting. The relief seemed to go on forever. Then, from above, a door opened. Footfalls sounded on the steps, boots scraping on stone. A beggar's feast you've set before us without Bittersteel. Bittersteel be damned, insisted a voice Dunk recognized, Lord Peake. No bastards to be trusted, not even him. A few victories will bring him across the water quickly enough. Dunk held his breath and his stream. Easier to speak of victories than to win them? Answered a deeper voice, a bass rumble sharp with irritation. The old king expected the boy to have it, and so will all the rest. Pretty words and charm won't make up for that lack. A dragon would. The prince swears the egg will hatch. He dreamed it, just as he once dreamed his brother's dead. A living dragon wins us every sword we could ever want. A dragon is one thing, a dream is another. I promise you, Bloodraven isn't off dreaming. We need a warrior, not a dreamer. Is the boy his father's son? You just hold to your part as agreed and leave that to me. Once we have Butterwell's gold and the swords of House Frey, Harrenhal will follow. then the brackens. Otho knows he cannot hope to stand alone. The voices faded as the men moved off. Dunk's piss began to flow again. He finished, gave himself a shake, and laced up. His father's son, he muttered. Who were they talking about? The son of the fiery knight? He almost called after them to make them show their faces, but thought better of it. He was alone, unarmed, and more than halfway drunk. He stood frowning a moment, then marched back to the hall. Inside, the final course had been cleared and the entertainments had begun. One of Lord Frey's daughters was butchering two hearts that beat as one on a high harp. Jugglers tossed flaming torches back and forth, while tumblers spun through the air in dizzying cartwheels. Lord Frey's nephew struck up the tune of the Bear and the Maiden Fair, and soon Sir Kirby Pym was thumping a wooden spoon on the table to keep the beat. The song spread like wildfire, and before long the entire hall was roaring the chorus about the black and brown bear covered in hair. Over at the high table, Lord Caswell had slumped forward, unconscious, his face resting in a spilled pool of wine. Nearby, Lady Virewell was sobbing openly, though no one could guess what had set her off. The drink, of course, kept coming. The Fancy Arbor vintages were long gone, replaced by local wines, or so the fiddler claimed. To Dunk, one cup tasted much like another. He also sampled the Hippocras, figuring it might be a year before he got another chance. The other hedge knights, good men all, had started swapping tales of women they'd known. Dunk's thoughts drifted to Tanzelle, wondering where she might be that night. He knew exactly where Lady Rohan was, back at Coldmoat Castle, in bed beside old Sir Eustace, who was probably snoring into his mustache. So he tried hard not to picture her. Do they ever spare a thought for me? He wondered gloomily. His brooding was cut short when a troop of painted dwarfs came tumbling out of a giant wooden pig on wheels. They chased Lord Butterwell's fool around the tables, whacking him with inflated pig bladders that let out a rude noise with every smack. It was the funniest sight Dunk had seen in ages, and he laughed as heartily as anyone. Lord Frey's son was so delighted that he jumped into the fray, borrowing a bladder from a dwarf to wallop the wedding guests. The boy's laugh was a shrill, hiccuping shriek that set Dunk's teeth on edge and made him fantasize about giving the child a good spanking or finding the nearest well. If that bladder so much as touches me, I might just do it. As the chinless boy scampered past, Sir Maynard remarked, There goes the lad who made this marriage happen. How's that? Dunk asked. The fiddler held up his empty cup, and a server hurried over to fill it. Sir Maynard nodded toward the dais, where the bride was popping cherries into her new husband's mouth. His lordship won't be the first to enjoy that particular pastry. Word is she lost her virtue to a potboy back at the Twins. She used to sneak down to the kitchens to meet him. One night, her little brother followed her. When he saw them going at it like a two-backed beast, he screamed bloody murder. The cooks and guards came running and found the lady and her scullion naked as the day they were born and dusted head to toe in flour, right on the marble slab where the cook rolls the dough. That can't be true, Dunk thought. Lord Butterwell owned vast lands and chests of gold. Why would he marry a girl tainted by a kitchen boy and hand over a dragon's egg to seal the deal? The Freys of the Crossing were no better born than the Butterwells. They just owned a bridge instead of herds of cattle. Lords, who can ever make sense of them? Dunk munched on some nuts and turned over what he'd overheard earlier while relieving himself. Dunk the Lunk, what exactly did you hear? He poured himself another cup of Hippocras, since the first had been so pleasant. Then he rested his head on his folded arms, just to give his eyes a break from the smoky air. He must have dozed off, because the next thing he knew, half the wedding guests were on their feet, chanting, "Bed them, bed them." The racket jerked him from a rather pleasant dream involving both Tanzelle the Tall and the Red Widow. "Bed them, the crowd roared. Dunk sat up, rubbing his eyes. Sir Franklin Frey had scooped up the bride and was carrying her down the aisle, surrounded by a swarm of men and boys. Meanwhile, the ladies from the high table had descended on Lord Butterwell. Lady Virewell, her tears forgotten, was trying to haul the lord from his chair, while one of his daughters worked on his bootlaces and a Frey woman tugged up his tunic. Lord Butterwell was swatting at them half-heartedly, laughing all the while. He was clearly drunk, Dunk observed, and Sir Franklin was even drunker. So drunk he nearly lost his grip on the bride. Before Dunk could fully grasp what was unfolding, John the Fiddler had yanked him upright. "Over here," John shouted. "Let the big man take her." Suddenly, Dunk was ascending a spiral staircase, the wriggling bride cradled against his chest. Keeping his balance was a struggle. The girl kept shifting, and the men crowding the stairs made bawdy jokes about dusting her with flour and giving her a proper kneading as they tugged at her garments. Even the dwarfs got in on the act, swarming around his ankles, howling with laughter and whacking his shins with their inflated bladders. He nearly stumbled over them half a dozen times. Dunk had no idea where to find Lord Butterwell's bedroom, but the revelers shoved and guided him until they arrived. By then, the bride was flushed, giggling, and almost completely undressed, save for a single stocking clinging to her left leg. Dunk's own face was burning, and not from the climb. His body's reaction would have been plain to see, but luckily every eye was fixed on the lady. Lady Butterwell looked nothing like Tanzelle, yet holding this squirming, half-naked woman had his thoughts circling back to the other. Tanzelle Too Tall, they called her, though she never seemed too tall for him. He wondered with a pang if their paths would ever cross again. On some lonely nights, he'd almost convinced himself he'd imagined her entirely. "No, you lunk, you only dreamed she fancied you back." The Lord's bedchamber, once he stumbled into it, was opulent. Myrish rugs softened the floor, the scent of 100 candles filled the air, and a suit of gilded plate armor stood sentinel by the door. It even boasted a small privy built into an alcove. The moment Dunk deposited the bride onto the vast bed, a dwarf scrambled up beside her and gave her breast a playful squeeze. She shrieked, the men roared, and Dunk, moving on instinct, grabbed the little man by his collar and hauled him, kicking, away from the lady. He was halfway across the room to toss the dwarf out when he saw it, the dragon's egg. It rested on a black velvet cushion atop a marble stand. It was larger than a chicken's egg, though smaller than the legends in his head had painted it. Its surface was a mosaic of fine red scales, glittering like rubies in the candlelight. Dunk dropped the dwarf and lifted the egg, just to feel its weight. It was surprisingly heavy. You could brain a man with this, and the shell wouldn't even crack. The scales were smooth under his fingers, a deep, shimmering crimson that seemed alive with hints of gold and swirls of black as he turned it. Blood and fire, he thought. "You there? What do you think you're doing?" A knight he didn't recognize was glowering at him, a large man with a black beard and a blotchy face, but it was the voice, deep and bristling with anger, that made Dunk blink in recognition. It was him, the man who traveled with Peake. "Set that down. Keep your grubby hands off his lordship's valuables, or by the gods, you'll regret it." The other knight was far less drunk than Dunk, so obeying seemed the prudent course. He placed the egg back on its cushion with exaggerated care and wiped his fingers on his sleeve. "No harm intended, sir." Dunk the lunk thick as a castle wall. Then he shouldered past the bearded knight and out the door. From the stairwell came the sound of cheerful shouts and feminine laughter. The women were escorting Lord Butterwell to his bride. Wanting no part of that procession, Dunk headed up instead of down and found himself on the tower roof beneath a blanket of stars, the pale castle shimmering in the moonlight below. The wine made his head swim, so he braced himself against the cold stone parapet. Was he going to be sick? Why had he gone and touched that cursed egg? The memory surfaced, unbidden Tanzelle's puppet show, and the wooden dragon that had sparked all the chaos back at Ashford. The memory brought a familiar pang of guilt. 3 good men lost, all to save a hedge knight's foot. It was a senseless trade then and now. Let that be your lesson, lunk. Dragons and their eggs are no business for the likes of you. It almost looks as if it's made of snow, he murmured to himself. Dunk turned to find John the Fiddler standing behind him, resplendent in silk and cloth of gold, a faint smile on his lips. What seems made of snow? The castle. All that pale stone in the moonlight? Tell me, Ser Duncan, have you ever traveled north of the Neck? They say it snows there even in summer. Have you laid eyes on the wall? No, my lord. Why is he asking about the wall? That was the plan, though. My Squire Egg and I were bound for Winterfell. How I wish I could ride with you.
You could show me the path.
The path? Dunk frowned. It's just the King's Road. Follow it north, and you can't possibly lose your way. The fiddler laughed softly. I suppose not, though you'd be amazed what some men manage to overlook. He moved to the parapet, gazing out. They say the Northmen are a fierce people, and their forests teem with wolves. My lord, why come up here? Allen was hunting for me, and I had no wish to be found. He becomes tedious when he drinks, our friend Allen. I saw you slip away from that dreadful chamber and thought I'd follow. I've had my share of wine, I'll admit, but not enough to face a naked Lord Butterwell. He offered Dunk a cryptic smile. I dreamed of you, Ser Duncan, before we ever met. When I saw you on the road, I knew your face instantly. It was as if we were old companions. A strange sense of déjà vu washed over Dunk. I dreamed of you, he said. My dreams are not like yours, Ser Duncan. Mine come true. You dreamed of me? He asked, his words slightly slurred by drink. What sort of dream? Why, said the fiddler, I dreamed you were clad all in white from head to toe, a long pale cloak streaming from those broad shoulders. You were a white sword, sir, a sworn brother of the Kingsguard, the finest knight in all the realm, living only to guard, to serve, to please your king. He placed a hand on Dunk's shoulder. You've had the same dream. I know you have. It was true. He remembered the first time the old man let him hold a sword. Every boy dreams of wearing the white cloak someday, yet only 7 ever do. Would it please you to be one of them? Me? Dunk shifted, dislodging the lordling's hand, which had begun to knead his shoulder. Maybe, or maybe not. A Kingsguard knight served for life, swearing off wives and lands. I might find Tanzell again. Why shouldn't I have a family? What I dream doesn't matter. Only a king can make a Kingsguard knight. Then it seems I must take the throne, though I'd much rather be teaching you to play the fiddle. You're drunk, and the pot calls the kettle black. Delightfully drunk. Wine makes all things possible, Ser Duncan. You'd look a vision in white, but if the color doesn't suit, perhaps you'd prefer to be a lord? Dunk laughed outright. I'd sooner grow great blue wings and fly. One's about as likely as the other. Now you mock me. A true knight would never mock his king. The fiddler sounded wounded. You'll believe me more readily when you see the dragon hatch. A dragon? A living dragon? Here. I dreamed it. This pale white castle, you, a dragon breaking from its egg. I saw it all, just as I once dreamed of my brothers lying dead. They were 12, and I was only 7, so they laughed. Then they died. I am 22 now, and I trust my dreams. Dunk's mind drifted to another tourney, to walking through a gentle spring rain with a different princeling. I dreamed of you and a dead dragon, Egg's brother Daron had told him. A great beast, immense, with wings so vast they could shadow this entire field. The dragon had collapsed upon you, yet you lived while the beast did not. And so it was for poor Baylor. Dreams were a shaky foundation upon which to build anything lasting. As you say, my lord, he replied to the fiddler. I beg your leave. Where are you off to, sir? To my bed, to find some sleep. I'm drunk as a lord's hound. Be my hound, then, sir. The night is thick with possibility. We could howl at the moon together and stir the gods from their slumber. What is it you want from me? Your loyalty, your sword. I would have you as my own man and lift you to a place of honor. My visions do not deceive me, Ser Duncan. You will wear a white cloak one day, and I must possess the dragon's egg. I must. My dreams have made that clear as spring water. Perhaps the egg will crack open with life, or else. The door behind them flew open with a crash. There he is, my lord. 2 men-at-arms entered the roof. Lord Gorman Peake followed close behind. Gormy, the fiddler said, his words slurring. What brings you to my private terrace, my lord? It is a roof, sir, and you have drunk too deep. Lord Gorman made a quick motion, and the guards advanced. Let us escort you to your bed. You have a joust tomorrow, if you'll recall. Kirby Pym can be a dangerous opponent. I had hoped to break a lance with good Ser Duncan here. Peake shot Dunk a look that held no warmth. Another time, perhaps? For your first contest, you've drawn Sir Kirby Pym. Then Pym must be unhorsed. So must every man who stands against me. The mystery knight triumphs over all challengers, and marvels follow in his path. A guard took the fiddler by the arm. "Sir Duncan, it appears we are parted," he called out, as they guided him down the steps. Only Lord Gorman remained on the roof with Dunk. "Hedge Knight," he snarled, "did no one ever teach you not to stick your hand into a lion's jaws?" "I had no one to teach me such things, my lord." "That explains much. What did he promise you?" "A keep of my own. A white cloak. Great blue wings to fly." "Here's my promise. 3 feet of sharp steel through your gut if you breathe a word of what transpired here." Dunk shook his head, trying to clear the fog. "It did little good." He doubled over and was sick. Some of it splashed onto Peake's boots. The Lord swore. "Hedge Knights," he said with contempt. "You have no business here. No true knight would be so rude as to arrive uninvited, but you wanderers of the roadside, we are welcome nowhere and appear everywhere, my lord." The wine had lent Dunk a reckless courage, or he would have stayed silent. He wiped his mouth with his sleeve. "Try to remember what I told you, sir. It will go badly for you if you forget." Lord Peake shook the filth from his boot. Then he was gone. Dunk leaned heavily against the stone wall once more. He pondered which of them was truly mad, Lord Gorman or the fiddler. By the time he stumbled back to the hall, only Maynard Plum remained of the company. "Was there any flour dusting her breasts when you got her small clothes off?" he asked. Dunk shook his head, poured another cup of wine, sipped it, and decided he had drunk his fill. Butterwell's stewards had arranged rooms in the keep for the high-born guests and beds in the barracks for their followers. The rest were left to choose between a straw pallet in the cellar or a patch of earth beneath the western walls to pitch their tents. The simple canvas shelter Dunk had gotten in Stony Sept was no grand pavilion, but it kept off the weather. Some of his neighbors were still awake, the silken walls of their tents glowing like painted lanterns in the dark. Laughter spilled from a blue pavilion embroidered with sunflowers, and the sounds of passion came from another striped in white and purple. Egg had pitched their own tent a little apart from the others. Master and the 2 horses were tethered nearby, and Dunk's arms and armor had been stacked neatly against the castle stones. When he ducked into the tent, he found his squire sitting cross-legged by a flickering candle, his bald head gleaming as he pored over a book. "You'll ruin your eyes reading by that weak light." Reading was still a closed book to Dunk, though the boy had tried to instruct him more than once. "I need the candle to read the words, sir. Would you like a smack on the ear?" "What is that book?" Dunk could see vibrant colors on the page, small painted shields tucked among the text. "It's a heraldry roll, sir." "Searching for the fiddler? You won't find him. Those rolls don't include hedge knights, only lords and famous champions. I wasn't looking for him. I noticed some unfamiliar sigils in the yard today. Lord Sunderland has arrived, sir. His banner shows 3 pale women's heads on a rippling field of green and blue. A man from the sisters, truly." The 3 sisters were islands in the Bight. Dunk recalled a Septon once calling those isles pits of vice and greed. Sisterton was known as the worst smuggler's haven in all the 7 kingdoms. "That's a long journey. He must be related to Lord Butterwell's new wife." "He isn't, sir." "Then he's here for the feasting. They eat a lot of fish on those islands, don't they?" "A man can tire of fish. Did you eat enough?" "I saved you half a chicken and some cheese." Dunk searched through his cloak. "They served us ribs, sir." Egg's face was nearly buried in the book. "Lord Sunderland fought for the Black Dragon, sir." "Like old Sir Eustace?" "He wasn't so terrible, was he?" "No, sir," Egg replied. "But I saw the dragon's egg." Dunk tucked the food away with their hardtack and salted beef. It was mostly red. "Does Lord Bloodraven possess a dragon's egg too?" Egg looked up from his reading. "Why would he? He's a bastard. A noble bastard, not a common one. Bloodraven was born out of wedlock, but his blood was high on both sides." Dunk was about to share what he'd overheard from the men when he noticed the boy's face. "What happened to your mouth?" "I got into a fight, sir." "Let me see it. It only bled a little. I put some wine on it." "Who were you fighting?" "Some other squires." "They claimed." "Never mind what they claimed. What did I tell you?" "To hold my tongue and avoid making trouble." The boy gingerly touched his swollen lip. "They called my father a kinslayer, though." "He is boy, though I doubt he intended it." Dunk had reminded Egg countless times not to let such talk wound him. "You know the truth. Let that be enough." They'd heard similar whispers before in cheap taverns and around campfires in the woods. Everyone in the realm knew how Prince Maekar's mace had struck down his brother Baelor Breakspear on Ashford Meadow. Rumors of schemes were inevitable. If they knew Prince Maekar was your father, they would never dare speak that way to you. They might whisper behind your back, but never to your face. And what did you say to these squires instead of keeping quiet? Egg looked ashamed. That Prince Baelor's death was a tragic accident, but when I said Prince Maekar loved his brother, Ser Adam's squire said he loved him to death, and Ser Malor's squire added he probably intended to love his brother Aris the same way, that's when I hit him. I hit him hard. I ought to hit you hard. A swollen ear to match that swollen lip. Your father would do the same if he were here. Do you think Prince Maekar requires a little boy to protect his name? What were his instructions when he sent you away with me? To serve you faithfully as your squire, and not to shy from any duty or hardship. And what else? To obey the king's laws, the rules of knighthood, and you? And what else?
To keep my head shaved or dyed, the boy said, clearly unhappy, and to tell no one my real name. Dunk nodded. How much had this boy drunk? He was drinking ale? You see, the ale was doing the talking. Words are just wind, Egg. Let them blow right past you. Some words are wind. The boy was nothing if not persistent. Some words are treason. This is a tourney for traitors, sir. What, all of them? Dunk shook his head. Even if that were true, it was long ago.
The Black Dragon is dead, and those who followed him are either gone or forgiven. And it isn't true. Lord Butterwell's own sons chose opposite sides. That makes him half a traitor, sir. That was 16 years past. Dunk's pleasant, wine-softened mood had vanished. He felt a sharp anger rising, and he was suddenly very sober. Lord Butterwell's steward, a man named Cosgrove, was overseeing the tournament. Dunk told Egg to find him and register his name for the joust, then quickly reconsidered. With so many lords present, someone might remember Ser Duncan the Tall from Ashford Meadow. Enter me as the gallows knight, instead, he decided. The small folk always loved a mystery knight. Egg touched his swollen lip. The gallows knight, sir? For your shield? Just do as I said. You've read enough for tonight. Dunk pinched out the candle between his fingers. The morning sun was relentless, baking the White Castle stones until heat shimmered rose from them. The air hung heavy with the scent of parched earth and trampled grass, and not a whisper of wind stirred the limp green, white, and yellow banners. Thunder was unusually restless, tossing his head and even snapping at Egg as the boy tightened the saddle. It's too hot for man or beast, Dunk thought. Even the gentlest soul would be irritable in this swelter. In the yard, two knights charged again. Sir Harbert Pagey, on a black-barded courser, met Sir Franklin Frey, whose grey trapper bore the twin towers. Their lances shattered spectacularly, but both men kept their seats. A half-hearted cheer rose from the stands and walls, quickly dying in the thick air. Too hot for cheering, Dunk mused, wiping his brow. Too hot for jousting. His head throbbed. Let me win this tilt and the next, and I'll be satisfied. He had delayed putting on his armor as long as possible, yet already his small clothes were plastered to his skin. There are worse soakings, he reminded himself, recalling the bloody deck of the White Lady during the Ironborn attack. At least sweat didn't smell of iron and salt. Pagey and Frey gathered fresh lances and spurred their mounts again, hooves kicking up clods of dry earth. The sharp crack of breaking wood made Dunk wince, too much wine and rich food the night before. His memories of the feast were a blur. Carrying the bride, a strange conversation on a rooftop with John the Fiddler and Lord Peake, talk of dragons, or was it eggs? It was all muddled. A pained roar cut through his thoughts. Dunk saw Ser Harbert's golden horse trotting riderless down the list as the knight himself writhed in the dirt. 2 more matches before my turn. The sooner he unseated Sir Uthor, the sooner he could shed his steel, find a cool drink, and rest. He should have an hour's reprieve before being called again. The portly herald climbed the viewing stand. Sir Argrave the Defiant, he announced, a knight of Nunney in service to Lord Butterwell. Sir Glendon Flowers, the knight of the Pussy Willows. Come forth and prove your valor. A wave of laughter rolled from the stands. Sir Argrave was a lean, weathered man in dented gray plate. riding an unarmored horse, tough and competent. His opponent was the young Ser Glendon, perched on his sorry mount and clad in mail, an open helm on his head, his shield bearing his father's fiery sigil. Dunk observed the young knight's lack of proper armor, thinking a solid strike to his head or chest could be fatal. Introduced as Glendon Flowers, the knight was visibly enraged. He spun his horse and shouted to the herald, "I am Glendon Ball. Mock me at your peril, for I carry a hero's blood in my veins." The herald offered no reply, but the crowd's laughter only grew louder at his outburst. "Why do they laugh?" Dunk asked aloud. "Is he a bastard?" He knew Flowers was the name for high-born bastards in the Reach. And what was that about Pussy Willows? "I could ask around, sir," Egg offered. "No," Dunk replied. "It's not our affair. Do you have my helm?" Across the field, Sir Argrave and Sir Glendon saluted Lord and Lady Butterwell. Dunk saw the Lord whisper to his young bride, who promptly giggled into her hand. "Yes, sir." Egg had put on his wide-brimmed hat to shield his eyes and bare scalp from the sun. Dunk usually teased him about it, but now he envied the shade. A straw hat would be far preferable to an iron one in this heat. He brushed his hair back, settled the heavy Grethelm onto his shoulders with both hands, and secured it. The lining smelled of stale sweat, and the metal's weight was a familiar burden. His head ached dully from the previous night's wine. "Sir," Egg said quietly, "you could still withdraw. If you lose thunder and your armor, then I would be finished as a knight." "Why would I lose?" Dunk retorted. The two knights had taken their positions. "It's not as though I'm facing the Laughing Storm himself. Is there some champion here I should worry about?" "Almost all of them, sir. You've earned a clout in the ear for that," Dunk grumbled. "Sir Uthor is older and half my size." He watched Ser Argrave lower his visor. Ser Glendon had no visor to lower. "You haven't jousted since Ashford Meadow, sir?" Insolent boy. "I've trained," Dunk insisted, though not as diligently as he should have. When possible, he practiced at quintains or rings, and sometimes he had Egg hang a shield or a barrel stave from a tree limb for him to charge. "You're better with a sword than a lance," Egg noted. "With an axe or mace, your strength is hard to match." There was enough truth in that to irritate Dunk further. "This is a contest of lances, not maces," he pointed out, just as Fireball's son and Sir Argrave the Defiant began their charge. "Go and fetch my shield." Egg grimaced but obeyed. Across the yard, Sir Argrave's lance scraped across Sir Glendon's shield, leaving a deep score. But Ball's own strike hit the center of his opponent's breastplate with such force it shattered the saddle cinch, sending both knight and saddle crashing to the dirt. Dunk was grudgingly impressed. The boy jousts as boldly as he boasts. He wondered if that would silence the laughter. A trumpet blast made him wince, and the herald mounted his stand once more. "Sir J of House Caswell, Lord of Bitterbridge and Defender of the Fords. Sir Kyle, the Cat of Misty Moor. Come forth and prove your valor." Sir Kyle's armor was well made but showed its age, covered in dents and scratches. "The mother has been kind to me, Sir Duncan," he told Dunk and Egg as he made his way to the lists. "I am sent against Lord Caswell, the very man I traveled here to meet. If anyone felt worse than Dunk this morning, it was likely Lord Caswell, who had drunk himself senseless at the feast. It's a miracle he can sit a horse after last night," said Dunk. "The victory is yours, sir." "Oh, no," Sir Kyle replied with a smooth, knowing smile. "The cat who wants his cream must know when to purr and when to bare his claws, Sir Duncan. If his lordship's lance so much as brushes my shield, I shall make a most dramatic fall to the earth. Afterwards, when I present my horse and armor to him, I will praise his lordship on how his skill has improved since I forged his very first blade. That will remind him of my service, and by sunset I shall be wearing Caswell colors once more, a sworn knight of Bitterbridge." "There is little honor in that path," Dunk nearly replied, but he held his silence. Sir Kyle would not be the first wandering knight to exchange his principles for a secure spot by a hearth. "As you wish," he murmured. "May fortune favor you or not, if that suits you better." Lord Joffrey Caswell was a slender young man of 20, though he cut a far more commanding figure in his plate than he had the previous evening, when he was slumped over in a spill of wine. A yellow centaur drawing a longbow was emblazoned across his shield. The same emblem decorated the white silk caparison of his horse, and shone in polished gold atop his helm. A man who bears a centaur as his sigil ought to ride with more grace. Dunk was unsure of Sir Kyle's own skill with a lance, but judging by Lord Caswell's uneasy seat, it seemed a strong gust might topple him. The cat merely needs to ride by at a brisk pace. Egg steadied Thunder as Dunk hauled himself up into the tall, unyielding saddle. Waiting there, he could sense the crowd's gaze upon him. They are questioning whether the large hedge knight has any talent. Dunk was questioning that himself. He would discover the truth soon enough. True to his word, the cat of Misty Moor made no earnest charge. Lord Caswell's lance wavered across the entire field, and Sir Kyle's aim was poor. Neither rider urged his horse beyond a trot. Even so, the cat was sent sprawling when Lord Joffrey's coronal happened to strike his shoulder. I believed all cats landed gracefully on their feet, Dunk mused as the hedge knight tumbled in the dirt. Lord Caswell's lance remained intact. As he wheeled his horse around, he thrust it skyward again and again, as if he had just unseated Leo Longthorn or the Laughing Storm himself. The cat removed his helm and hurried after his loose horse. "My shield?" Dunk said to Egg. The boy passed it up. Dunk slid his arm through the strap and grasped the handle. The weight of the kite shield was a comfort, though its size made it cumbersome, and the sight of the hanged man once more gave him a foreboding feeling. Those are unlucky arms. He decided to have the shield repainted at the earliest chance. Grant me a clear course and a swift victory, he prayed as Butterwell's herald ascended the steps once again. Sir Uthor Underleaf, his voice proclaimed, the gallows knight, come forth and prove your valor. Take care, sir, Egg cautioned as he handed Dunk a tourney lance, a tapered wooden shaft 12 feet long tipped with a rounded iron coronal shaped like a clenched fist. The other squires claim Sir Uthor sits his saddle well, and he's swift. Swift? Dunk scoffed. He bears a snail upon his shield. How swift can he be? He nudged Thunder's flanks and walked the horse forward slowly, his lance held upright. One win, and my standing is unchanged. 2 will put us far ahead. 2 is not too much to expect among this company. He had been lucky in the draw, at least. He might have pulled the old ox or Sir Kirby Pym or some other local champion. Dunk suspected the master of games might be pairing the hedge knights against each other deliberately, so no young lord need face the embarrassment of losing to one in the first round. It makes no difference. One opponent at a time, that was the old man's constant advice. Sir Uthor is all that should occupy my thoughts now. They met below the viewing stand where Lord and Lady Butterwell reclined on cushions in the shadow of the castle walls. Lord Frey sat beside them, bouncing his runny-nosed son upon one knee. A line of serving girls fanned them, yet Lord Butterwell's damask tunic was darkened with sweat beneath the arms, and his lady's hair clung damply to her brow. She appeared flushed and restless, shifting in her seat with an air of discontent. Yet the moment her eyes found Dunk, she arched her back and thrust her shoulders forward in a manner that sent heat rushing to his cheeks beneath his helmet. He lowered his lance in a gesture of respect toward her and her husband, a courtesy Sir Uthor mirrored. Lord Butterwell offered them a bland wish for a fair contest, while his young wife responded by playfully sticking out her tongue. The moment had arrived. Dunk guided Thunder back to the southern end of the field. 80 feet away, his opponent was settling into position atop a nimble gray stallion, smaller than Thunder but fiery with youth. Sir Uthor's armor was a polished green enamel, his chainmail gleaming like liquid silver from his rounded helmet trailed ribbons of green and gray, and his shield displayed a silver snail against a green field. Fine armor and a strong horse mean a worthy prize if I can knock him from the saddle. A trumpet blast cut the air. Thunder moved forward at a steady trot. Dunk swung his lance across, lowering it until it pointed just past the horse's head and over the wooden barrier that separated him from Ser Uthor. His shield guarded his left side. He leaned into the charge, muscles tightening as Thunder surged down the list. They were a single creature now, rider, steed, and weapon fused into one being of flesh, wood, and steel. Ser Uthor was coming fast, the hooves of his gray churning up clouds of dry earth. When 40 yards remained, Dunk dug his heels in, and Thunder leapt into a full gallop. He fixed the tip of his lance on that silver snail. The oppressive sun, the swirling dust, the castle walls, Lord Butterwell and his bored bride, the watching knights and common folk, all of it faded into a blur. Only the enemy mattered. Another kick of the spurs, thunder stretched into a furious run. The snail emblem rushed toward him, growing larger with every stride of the gray stallion, but ahead Ser Uthor's lance, tipped with a menacing iron fist, aimed true. My shield is stout. It will bear the strike. Just hit the snail, and the day is won. With mere yards remaining, Ser Uthor adjusted his aim, tilting his point upward. Dunk heard a sharp crack as his own lance connected, the shock vibrating through his arm and shoulder, but he never saw where it landed. Uthor's iron fist took him squarely between the eyes, driving into him with the combined force of man and charging horse. He awoke on his back, staring blankly at the curved stone arches of a barrel-vaulted ceiling. For several heartbeats, he had no memory of where he was or how he'd come to be there. Echoing voices and floating faces drifted through his mind: old Sir Arlan Tanzel Bennis, the Red Widow, Baelor Breakspear, Arian, the melancholy Lady Vaith. Then, all at once, it returned. The blistering heat, the silver snail, the iron fist flying at his face. He groaned and tried to prop himself up on an elbow, a movement that set his skull throbbing like a war drum. Both eyes seemed to focus, and he felt no gaping wound in his head, which was a small relief. He was in a cellar, surrounded by stacked casks of wine and ale. At least it's cool down here, he thought dimly, and drink is plentiful. The coppery taste of blood filled his mouth. A spike of fear shot through him. Had he bitten through his tongue? Would he be left mute as well as slow-witted? "Good day," he rasped, just to hear the sound. The words bounced softly off the stone. He attempted to sit up, but the room tilted and spun. "Easy now, easy," came a thin, quavering voice nearby. A stooped old man in gray robes approached the pallet, a maester's chain of many metals hanging about his neck. His face was a landscape of wrinkles, framed by long gray hair and dominated by a prominent beak-like nose. "Lie still. Let me look at your eyes." The maester pried Dunk's eyelids open with thumb and forefinger, peering intently first into one, then the other. "My head is pounding," Dunk muttered. The maester gave a dry snort. "Be thankful it's still attached to your shoulders, sir. Here, drink this. It may ease the pain." He offered a clay cup filled with a murky liquid. Dunk forced down every bitter drop, fighting the urge to retch. "The tourney," he said, wiping his mouth with the back of his hand. "What happened? Tell me." "The usual folly that unfolds at these gatherings," the maester replied, his tone weary. "Men hammering at each other until one falls senseless. You were the one who fell senseless. Men had been unhorsing each other with lances all afternoon. Lord Smallwood's nephew broke his wrist, and Sir Eden Risley's leg was crushed beneath his falling mount. Yet no one had died so far. Though I confess I feared for you, sir. Was I knocked from my saddle?" His head felt stuffed with wool, or he'd never have asked something so foolish. Dunk regretted the words as soon as they left his mouth, with a crash that rattled the very battlements. Those who'd wagered good silver on you were sorely disappointed, and your squire was nearly frantic. He'd be here still if I hadn't shooed him away. I've no need for children underfoot. I reminded the boy of his duties. Dunk realized he needed reminding as well. "What duties?" "Your horse, sir. Your arms and your armor?" "Right," Dunk muttered, the memory returning. The lad was a good squire. He knew what was required. "I've lost the old man's sword and the armor Steely Pate made for me. That musician friend of yours was asking after you, too. He insisted you receive the finest care. I sent him packing as well." "How long have you been watching over me?" Dunk flexed the fingers of his sword hand. They all still worked. "Only my head aches, and Sir Arlan always said I never used that anyway. 4 hours by the sundial." 4 hours wasn't so terrible. He'd once heard a tale of a knight struck so hard he slept for 40 years, waking to find himself an old, withered man. Do you know if Ser Uthor won his next match? Perhaps the snail would win the whole tourney. It might take some sting from the defeat if Dunk could tell himself he'd lost to the finest knight in the lists. That one? He did indeed. Against Ser Adam Frey, a cousin to the bride and a promising young lance. Her ladyship swooned when Ser Adam fell, They had to help her back to her chambers. Dunk pushed himself to his feet, swaying as he rose, but the maester steadied him. "Where are my clothes? I have to go. I need to. I must." "If you cannot remember, it cannot be so urgent." The maester made a dismissive gesture. "I would advise you to avoid rich foods, strong drink, and any further blows to the head. But I learned long ago that knights are deaf to sense. Go on, then. I have other fools to tend." Outside, Dunk saw a hawk circling in wide, lazy loops against the bright blue sky. He envied its freedom. A few clouds were gathering to the east, dark as his own spirits. As he made his way back toward the tilting ground, the sun beat down on his head like a hammer on an anvil. The ground seemed to shift under his feet, or perhaps he was just swaying. He'd nearly fallen twice on the cellar steps. I should have listened to Egg. He moved slowly across the outer ward, skirting the edges of the crowd. Out on the field, plump Lord Alan Cockshaw was limping away between two squires, the latest victim of young Glendon Ball. A third squire carried his helm, its 3 proud feathers snapped. "Sir John the Fiddler," the herald announced. "Sir Franklin of House Frey, a knight of the Twins, sworn to the Lord of the Crossing. Come forth and prove your valor." Dunk could only stand and watch as the fiddler's large black destrier trotted onto the field in a swirl of blue silk adorned with golden swords and fiddles. His breastplate was enameled a deep blue, as were his polans, couter, greaves, and gorget. The ringmail beneath was gilded. Sir Franklin rode a dapple gray with a flowing silver mane, matching the gray of his silks and the silver of his armor. On his shield, surcoat, and horse trappings he bore the twin towers of Frey. They charged and charged again. Dunk stood watching, but saw none of it. "Dunk the Lunk, thick as a castle wall," he berated himself. He had a snail on his shield. How could you lose to a man with a snail on his shield? There was cheering all around him. When Dunk looked up, he saw Sir Franklin Frey on the ground. The fiddler had dismounted to help his fallen foe to his feet. He is one step closer to that dragon's egg, Dunk thought bitterly. And where does that leave me? As he neared the postern gate, Dunk encountered the troop of dwarfs from the previous evening's feast, readying to depart. They were securing ponies to their wheeled wooden swine and a second, more ordinary wagon. He counted 6 of them, each appearing more stunted and misshapen than the one before. A couple might have been children, but their extreme shortness made it difficult to be sure. In the daylight, clad in horsehide trousers and coarse hooded cloaks, they seemed far less merry than they had in their motley. "A good morning to you," Dunk offered out of courtesy. "Heading out, those clouds to the east could bring rain." The sole reply was a baleful stare from the most hideous of the little men. Was he the one I hauled off Lady Butterwell? At close range, the dwarf carried a stench like an open sewer. One breath was sufficient to make Dunk quicken his pace. The trek across the courtyard felt as endless as the time he and Egg had once spent crossing the Dornish sands. He kept close to a wall, leaning against it now and then. Each turn of his head made the world sway. "A drink," he thought. "I need water, or I'm going down." A passing stable boy directed him to the nearest well, where he found Kyle the cat in quiet conversation with Maynard Plum. Sir Kyle's posture was slumped in defeat, but he glanced up as Dunk approached. "Sir Duncan? Word was you were dead, or nearly so." Dunk massaged his temples. "I only wish that were true." "I know that feeling all too well," Sir Kyle sighed. "Lord Caswell did not recognize me. When I reminded him how I carved his first practice sword, he looked at me as if I'd gone mad." He declared there was no room at Bitterbridge for knights who had proven themselves as feeble as I. The cat released a bitter chuckle. "Yet he kept my arms and armor. My horse, too. What am I to do?" Dunk had no solution to offer. Even a free rider needed a mount. A sellsword must have a sword to sell. "You'll find another horse," Dunk said, hauling up the bucket. "The realm is full of them. You'll find some other lord to equip you." He cupped his hands, filled them with water, and drank. "Some other lord? Aye. Do you know one? I am not as young or strong as you, nor as large. Big men are always wanted. Lord Butterwell favors sizable knights for one. Consider Tornheddle. Have you watched him joust? He's unhorsed every challenger. So has Fireball's boy, though, the fiddler as well. I almost wish he had been the one to defeat me. He declines all ransoms. He desires only the dragon's egg, he claims, that, and the friendship of those he bests. Maynard Plum gave a dry laugh. The fiddle of chivalry, more like, that lad is playing a dangerous tune, and we'd all be wise to be away from here before the storm hits. He takes no ransoms, said Dunk. A chivalrous act. Chivalrous acts come easily when your purse is stuffed with gold, Sir Maynard remarked. There's a lesson in this if you're wise enough to heed it, Sir Duncan. It's not too late for you to leave. Leave? Go where? Sir Maynard shrugged. Anywhere. Winterfell, Summerhall, a shy by the shadow. It scarcely matters, so long as it's away from here. Take your horse and gear and slip out the postern. You won't be missed. The snail is preoccupied with his next tilt, and the rest have eyes only for the jousting. For a fleeting moment, Dunk was tempted. So long as he was armed and mounted, he could still claim to be a knight of sorts. Without them, he was little better than a beggar. A large beggar, but a beggar nonetheless. But his arms and armor now belonged to Ser Uthor. So did Thunder. Better a beggar than a thief. He had been both in the alleys of Flea Bottom, running with Ferret, Rafe, and Pudding, but the old man had pulled him from that existence. He knew what Ser Arlen of Pennytree would have said to Plum's proposal. With Ser Arlen gone, Dunk said it for him. Even a hedge knight has his honor. Would you rather die with your honor pristine, or live with it tarnished? No, don't answer. I already know what you'll say. Take your boy and run, Gallows Knight. Before those arms of yours seal your fate. Dunk stiffened. What do you know of my fate? Did you have a vision like the fiddler? What is it you think you know about egg? I know an egg is wise to avoid the fire, Plum replied. White Walls is no safe haven for the lad. How did your own joust go, sir? Dunk asked, changing the subject. I never entered the lists. The signs turned against it. So who do you suppose will win the dragon's egg? Not me, Dunk told himself. The gods know. I don't. Take a guess, sir. You've got eyes in your head. He considered it. The fiddler? Well done. Care to share your thinking? It's just a feeling I have. I have a feeling too, said Maynard Plum. A grim one for anyone foolish enough to stand in our fiddler's path. Egg was tending to Thunder outside their tent, but his mind was elsewhere. The boy is blaming himself for my defeat. That's enough, Dunk called out. Any more brushing and Thunder will be as hairless as you are. Sir? Egg let the brush fall. I never believed some snail could finish you, sir. He hugged him tightly. Dunk plucked the boy's floppy straw hat and perched it on his own head. The maester mentioned you ran off with my armor. Egg grabbed his hat back, offended. I've cleaned your mail and shined every piece, sir. But your helm is dented and cracked where Ser Uthor struck you. You'll need an armorer to fix it. Let Ser Uthor deal with it. It belongs to him now. No horse, no sword, no armor. Maybe those dwarfs would take me on. What a sight that would be. 6 little men whacking a giant with pig bladders. Thunder is his as well. Come on, we'll deliver it all to him and wish him luck in the next rounds. Right now, sir? Aren't you going to try and buy Thunder back? With what, lad? Pebbles and dung? I've been thinking, sir, perhaps you could borrow. Dunk stopped him. No one's going to lend me that kind of coin, Egg. Why would they? Who am I but some oversized fool who pretended to be a knight until a snail with a lance nearly cracked his skull? Well, said Egg, you could have reign, sir. I'll go back to riding maester. We could head for Summerhall. You could join my father's household. His stables are full of horses. You could have a war horse and a riding horse, too. Egg meant it kindly, but Dunk couldn't crawl back to Summerhall like that, broke and defeated, looking for a place without even a sword to his name. Lad, he said, that's generous, but I won't take scraps from your lord father's table or from his stables either. Maybe it's time we went our separate ways. Dunk could always trudge off to join the city watch in Lannisport or Old Town. They valued big men for that. I've cracked my head on every low beam in every tavern from here to King's Landing. Maybe it's time my size put some coins in my pocket instead of just bumps on my skull. But watchmen didn't have squires. I've taught you what little I know. You'd be better off with a proper master-at-arms to train you, some grizzled old knight who actually knows which end of a lance to point forward. I don't want a proper master-at-arms, Egg insisted. I want you. What if I used my— No, not another word, I won't hear it. Go collect my gear. We'll present it to Ser Uthor with my regards. Difficult tasks only get harder if you delay. Egg scuffed the dirt, his expression as mournful as his oversized hat. Yes, sir, as you command. From the outside, Ser Uthor's tent was utterly plain, a large, boxy shape of canvas the color of dust, anchored with rope. A silver snail marked the center pole beneath a long, gray pennant, the sole bit of adornment. Stay here, Dunk told Egg. The boy held Thunder's lead. The great brown destrier was burdened with all of Dunk's arms and armor, even his battered old shield, the Gallows Knight. What a pitiful mystery knight I turned out to be. I won't be long. He ducked his head and bent to push through the tent flap. The outside of the tent gave no hint of the luxury inside. The floor was covered in thick, vibrantly colored Myrish carpets. A heavy trestle table was set with camp chairs, and a soft feather bed was piled with cushions. The air smelled of perfumed incense from a glowing iron brazier. Ser Uthor Underleaf was seated at the table with a gawky squire about Dunk's own age, the two of them sorting through a small fortune in coins. Dunk watched as the snail bit one piece, set another aside, and lectured the young man. You still have much to learn, Will. This coin's been clipped, that one's been shaved. Now, what of this? A gold dragon spun across his knuckles. Always look before you accept payment. He tossed it. Will fumbled the catch, and the coin dropped to the rug. He scrambled to retrieve it, turning it over in his hands before declaring, It's good, m'lord. There's a dragon on one side and a king on the other. Ser Uthor's gaze shifted to Dunk. The hanged man. I'm pleased to see you on your feet, sir. For a moment, I feared I'd done you permanent harm. Do me a service and educate my squire about dragons. Will, give the coin to Ser Duncan. Reluctantly, Dunk accepted it. He unhorsed me, and now he wants me to perform like a trained monkey? He studied the coin, weighing it in his palm, inspecting both faces, even testing it with his teeth. It's gold, not clipped or shaved. The weight is true. I'd have accepted it as well, milord. What's the trouble? The king, Ser Uthor replied simply. Dunk looked closer. The face stamped on the coin was youthful, handsome, and clean-shaven. King Aerys wore a beard on his coins, as did the old King Aegon before him. King Daeron had been clean-shaved, but this wasn't his likeness either. The coin seemed too new to be from the time of Aegon the Unworthy. Dunk squinted at the letters below the portrait. 6 of them. They spelled a name he knew, yet the face was wrong. Then he noticed the 4th letter was oddly shaped. It wasn't quite right. Daemon, he said aloud. It says Daemon. But there never was a King Daemon, only the pretender, Ser Uthor finished. Daemon Blackfyre minted his own coinage during his rebellion, but it's still gold, Will protested, rubbing his ear. If it's gold, it should spend the same as any other dragon, lord. The snail cuffed him sharply. Fool, it is gold, rebel's gold, traitor's gold. Merely possessing such a coin is treason, and spending it is twice the offense. This will have to be melted down. He struck the squire once more for good measure. Out of my sight, this good knight and I have matters to discuss. Will fled the tent without a backward glance. Sit, please, Ser Uthor said, his tone now courteous. Will you take some wine? Here, in his own domain, Underleaf seemed a different man entirely, a snail safely withdrawn into its shell. No, thank you, Dunk said, flicking the gold coin back across the table. Trader's gold? Blackfyre gold. Egg had called this a trader's tourney, and Dunk had refused to listen. He owed the boy an apology. A half-cup, then, Underleaf insisted, filling 2 cups regardless. You sound as though you need it. Out of his armor, he looked more like a prosperous merchant than a knight. You've come about your forfeit, I assume. Aye, Dunk said, taking the offered wine. Perhaps it would dull the pounding in his head. I brought my horse, and all my arms and armor. Take them with my compliments. Ser Uthor smiled thinly. And this is where I tell you that you rode a gallant course. Dunk wondered if gallant was just a chivalrous word for clumsy. That's kind of you to say, but I fear you misheard me, sir. If it's not too bold, might I ask how you came to be a knight? Sir Arlen of Pennytree found me in Flea Bottom, Dunk answered, the memory surfacing with a familiar ache. I was chasing a runaway pig. His former squire had died on the redgrass field, so he needed someone to tend his horse and clean his armor. He offered to teach me the sword and lance and how to ride if I would enter his service, so I did. A sweet story. Though if I were you, I'd skip the part about the pigs. Tell me, where is this Ser Arlen now? He passed. I laid him to rest. I see. Did you carry him home to Pennytree? I never knew where that was. Dunk had never laid eyes on the old man's Pennytree. Sir Arlen rarely mentioned it, much as Dunk himself avoided speaking of Flea Bottom. I buried him on a slope facing west, so he could watch the sun set. The camp chair groaned under his weight as Sir Uthor settled back into it. I have my own armor, and a finer horse than yours. Why would I want some worn-out nag and a sack of dented plate and tarnished mail? Steely Pate forged that armor, Dunk replied, a flare of irritation in his voice. Egg has kept it well. There's not a speck of rust on the mail, and the steel is sound and strong. Strong and heavy, Sir Uthor countered, and far too large for any ordinary man. You are unusually big, Duncan the Tall. As for your horse, he's too old to ride and too lean to eat. Thunder isn't as young as he once was, Dunk conceded, and the armor is sizable, as you say. But you could sell it. In Lannisport or King's Landing, plenty of smiths would take it off your hands. For a tenth of its worth, maybe, said Sir Uthor, and only to melt down for the metal. No, what I need is good silver, not old iron, the coin of the realm. So, do you want to buy back your arms or not? Dunk turned the silver wine cup in his hands, frowning. It was heavy, with a band of golden snails set around the rim. The wine inside was golden too, rich and potent. If wishes were horses, yes, I'd pay. Gladly, only. You haven't 2 coppers to rub together. If you would, lend my horse and armor back to me. I could pay the ransom later, once I found the coin. The snail looked amused. And where would you find it, pray tell? I could take service with some lord, or... The words came hard, making him feel like a beggar. It might take a few years, but I'd pay you. I swear it. On your honor as a knight, Dunk flushed. I could put my mark on a parchment. A hedge knight's scratch on a scrap of paper? Ser Uthor rolled his eyes. Good for wiping my backside. Nothing more. You're a hedge knight too. Now you insult me. I ride where I please and serve no man but myself. True, but it's been many a year since I last slept under a hedge. I find inns are far more comfortable. I am a tourney knight, the best you're ever likely to meet. The best? His arrogance stoked Dunk's anger. The Laughing Storm might disagree, sir, or Leo Longthorn, or the Brute of Bracken at Ashford Meadow. No one spoke of snails. Why is that, if you're such a famous tourney champion? Have you heard me call myself a champion? That path leads to renown. I'd sooner have the pox. Thank you, no. I'll win my next joust, aye. But in the final, I'll take a fall. Butterwell offers 30 dragons for the knight who comes second. That will do for me, along with some decent ransoms and the coin from my wagers. He gestured toward the piles of silver stags and golden dragons on the table. You seem a sturdy fellow, and very large. Size always impresses the fools, though it means little in a joust. Will was able to get odds of 3 to 1 against me. Lord Shawnee gave 5 to 1, the idiot. He flicked a silver stag with his long fingers, setting it spinning. The old ox will be the next to fall. Then the knight of the Pussy Willows, if he lasts that long, given how sentiment runs, I should get fine odds against them both. The small folk do love their local heroes. Sir Glendon has a hero's blood, Dunk said suddenly. Oh, I do hope so. Hero's blood should be good for 2 to 1. A whore's blood draws poorer odds. Sir Glendon never misses a chance to speak of his supposed father, yet have you ever heard him mention his mother? There is a reason for that. He was born to a camp follower named Jenny. They called her Penny Jenny until the battle at Redgrass Field. The night before the fighting, she lay with so many men that afterward she was known as Redgrass Jenny. Fireball likely had her. I don't doubt it, but so did 100 others. Our young friend Glendon assumes a great deal, it seems to me. He doesn't even have the red hair. Hero's blood, Dunk thought. He claims he is a knight. That much is true in a manner of speaking. The boy and his sister were raised in a brothel called the Pussy Willows. After Penny Jenny died, the other women looked after them and fed the lad the story his mother invented, about him being Fireball's son. An aging squire who lived nearby gave the boy what training he could, such as it was, in exchange for ale and company, but being only a squire he could not make the little bastard a knight. Then, about half a year ago, a group of knights happened upon the brothel, and one Sir Morgan Dunstable took a drunken liking to Sir Glendon's sister. As it happened, the sister was still untouched, and Dunstable lacked the coin for her maidenhead, so a bargain was struck. Right there in the Pussy Willows, in front of 20 witnesses, Sir Morgan tapped the brother on the shoulder and declared him a knight. Afterward, the little sister took him upstairs and let him claim his prize. And there you have it. Any knight could make a knight. Dunk had heard stories while squiring for Ser Arlen of men who bought their knighthood with a favor, a threat, or a pouch of silver, but never with a sister's virtue. That's just a story, he heard himself say. It can't be true. I had it from Kirby Pym, who swears he was there and saw the knighting himself. Ser Uthor shrugged. Hero's son, whore's son, or a bit of both, when the boy faces me, he will fall. The lots might give you a different opponent. Ser Uthor raised an eyebrow. Cosgrove is as fond of silver as the next man. I assure you I will draw the old ox next, and then the boy. Would you care to make a wager on it? I have nothing left to wager. Dunk was troubled more by the realization that the snail was bribing the master of the games to get the matchups he wanted than by the fact that the man had wanted him. He stood. I've said what I came to say. My horse and my sword are yours, and all my armor. The snail pressed his fingertips together. Perhaps there is another path. You are not entirely without your talents. You fall in a most spectacular fashion. Ser Uthor's lips shone when he smiled. I will return your horse and armor to you if you enter my service. Service? Dunk did not understand. What sort of service? You have a squire. Do you need to man some castle wall? I might, if I owned a castle. To be honest, I prefer a good inn. Castles are too costly to keep up. No, the service I require is that you face me in a few more tourneys. 20 should do. You can manage that, surely? You'll get a 10th share of my winnings, and in the future, I promise to strike that broad chest of yours and not your head. You want me to travel with you just to be knocked off my horse? Ser Uthor gave a pleasant chuckle. You are such a strapping figure, no one will ever believe that some round-shouldered old man with a snail on his shield could put you down. He rubbed his chin. You need a new sigil yourself, by the way. That hanged man is grim enough, I grant you, but, well, he's hanging, isn't he? Dead and defeated. Something fiercer is required. A bear's head, perhaps. A skull. Or 3 skulls, even better. A babe on a spear. And you should let your hair grow long and cultivate a beard. The wilder and more tangled, the better. There are more of these little tourneys than you know. With the odds we'd get, we'd win enough to buy a dragon's egg before. Before word got out that I was a hopeless case? I lost my armor, not my honor. You'll have thunder in my arms, nothing more. Pride suits a beggar poorly, sir. You could do far worse than ride alongside me. At the very least, I could teach you a thing or two about jousting, a subject you're currently quite ignorant of. You'd just make a fool of me again. I already accomplished that earlier. And even fools need to eat. Dunk wanted to wipe that smug smile right off his face. Now I understand the snail on your shield. You're no true knight. Spoken like a genuine oaf. Are you truly so blind to the danger you're in? Ser Uthor set his cup down. Do you know why I struck you where I did? He rose and tapped Dunk lightly in the center of his chest. A lance placed here would have knocked you down just as fast. The head is a smaller mark, harder to hit, though far more likely to be fatal. I was paid to aim for it. Paid? Dunk took a step back. What are you talking about? 6 gold dragons handed over this morning, with 4 more promised once you were dead. A pitiful price for a knight's life. You should be grateful it was so low. Had the offer been richer, I might have driven my lance straight through your visor. Dunk's head spun. Why would anyone pay to have me killed? I've wronged no one here at White Walls. Surely no one hated him that much except perhaps Egg's brother Arion, and the Bright Prince was exiled across the sea. Who paid you? A servant brought the gold at dawn, not long after the tournament pairings were posted. His face was hidden, and he did not give his master's name. But why? Dunk demanded. I did not ask, Sir Uthor replied, refilling his cup. I suspect you have more enemies than you realize, Ser Duncan. How could it be otherwise? There are those who would claim you are the root of all our recent troubles. A chill settled over Dunk's heart. Speak plainly, the snail shrugged. I wasn't at Ashford Meadow myself, but the tourney circuit is my life. I follow these events as closely as maesters chart the stars. I know how a certain hedge knight was the cause of a trial of 7 at Ashford, which led to Prince Baelor Breakspear dying by his own brother Makar's hand. Sir Uthor sat back, stretching his legs. Prince Baelor was beloved. The Bright Prince also had friends who haven't forgotten why he was sent away. Consider my offer, sir. A snail may leave a trail of slime, but a little slime never hurt anyone, while if you dance with dragons, you should expect to get burned. The world felt gloomier when Dunk left the snail's tent. The eastern clouds had swollen, dark and heavy, and the sinking sun in the west stretched long shadows across the yard. He found the squire while examining Thunder's hooves. Where's Egg? Dunk asked him. The bald boy? How should I know? Ran off somewhere. He couldn't face saying goodbye to Thunder, Dunk decided. He'll be back at our tent with his books. But he wasn't. The books were there, neatly stacked beside Egg's bedroll, but the boy himself was missing. Something was off. Dunk could sense it. It wasn't like Egg to disappear without permission. A couple of weathered men-at-arms were sharing barley beer outside a striped pavilion nearby. Well, to hell with that, once was plenty for me, one grumbled. The field was green at sunrise. Sure, he stopped when his companion nudged him, finally noticing Dunk. Sir, have you seen my squire? The boy called Egg. The man scratched the gray stubble under his ear. I recall him. Less hair than me and a mouth 3 times as big. Some of the other lads gave him a hard time, but that was last night. Haven't laid eyes on him since. Sir. Probably scared him off, said the other man. Dunk fixed him with a stern look. If he returns, tell him to wait for me here. Aye, sir. We will. Maybe he just went to watch the jousts. Dunk turned back toward the tilting grounds. As he passed the stables, he came upon Sir Glendon Ball, grooming a handsome sorrel charger. Have you seen Egg? He asked. He passed by just a moment ago, Sir Glendon said, pulling a carrot from his pocket to offer the sorrel mare. What do you think of her? Lord Costain's squire came to buy her back, but I sent him away. I'm keeping this one for myself. His lordship won't be pleased about that. His lordship complained I had no right to paint a fireball on my shield. He suggested a clump of pussy willows instead. His lordship can go hang, the young knight replied. Dunk couldn't suppress a smile. He'd endured similar scorn at that very table, forced to swallow the bitter words of men like the Bright Prince and Sir Stephen Fossaway. He felt a strange connection to this bristling knight. For all I know, my own mother walked the same streets. How many horses have you won in these contests? Sir Glendon gave a weary shrug. I stopped counting. Mortimer Boggs still owes me one. He swore he'd eat his horse before letting a whore's bastard ride her. He even took a hammer to his armor before sending it over as ransom. It's more whole than steel now. I might get a few coins for the scrap. His voice held more sorrow than anger. There was a stable near the inn where I grew up. I worked there as a boy, and whenever I could, I'd sneak the horses out while their owners were distracted. I rode them all, Stotts, Roundsies, palfreys, drays, plow horses, war horses, even a Dornish sand steed once. An old man I knew taught me to fashion my own lances. I truly believed that if I showed them all how skilled I was, they'd have to acknowledge me as my father's son. But they refuse. Even now, they just won't. Some never will, Dunk told him gently. No matter what you accomplish, but not everyone is like that. I've met decent men among them. He paused, considering. Once this tourney ends, Egg and I are heading north. We plan to take service at Winterfell and fight for the Starks against the Ironborn. You could ride with us." Sir Arlan had often said the North was another world entirely. Up there, no one would know the story of Penny Ginny or mock him as the Knight of the Pussy Willows. They would judge him by his sword and his deeds alone. Sir Glendon shot him a suspicious look. "Why would I want to do that? Are you saying I should run away and hide?" "Not at all. I only thought 2 swords are better than 1. The roads aren't as safe as they used to be." "That's true enough," the boy conceded reluctantly. "But my father was once promised a spot in the Kingsguard. I mean to claim the white cloak he never got to wear." "You've as much chance of wearing a white cloak as I do," Dunk almost said. "You were born to a camp follower, and I crawled out of the gutters of Flea Bottom. Kings don't hand honors to the likes of us." But the lad wouldn't welcome that harsh truth. Instead, he simply said, "Strength to your arm, then." He had taken only a few steps when Sir Glendon called after him. "Sir Duncan, wait. I shouldn't have spoken so harshly. A knight must be courteous, my mother always told me." The boy fumbled for the right words. "Lord Peake visited me after my last joust. He offered me a place at Starpike. He said a storm is coming, the likes of which Westeros hasn't seen in a generation, and that he'll need swords and loyal men to wield them." Dunk could scarcely believe it. Gorman Peake had made his contempt for hedge knights abundantly clear, both on the road and atop the tower, yet the offer seemed generous. "Peake is a powerful lord," he said cautiously, "but not a man I would trust, I think." "No," the boy agreed, his cheeks flushing. "There was a condition. He'd take me into his service," he said. "But first I had to prove my loyalty. He would arrange for me to face his friend the fiddler next, and he wanted my oath that I would lose." Dunk believed him. He knew he should be shocked, but somehow he wasn't. "What was that you said?" "I told him that even if I tried, I might not be able to lose to the fiddler. I mentioned I'd already unhorsed men far more skilled than him, and that the dragon's egg would be in my possession before sunset." Ball offered a weak smile. It wasn't the response he was hoping for. He called me a fool and warned me to watch my back. He said the fiddler had plenty of friends while I had none. Dunk placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "You have one now, sir, and it'll be 2, just as soon as I track down Egg." The young knight met his gaze and gave a solemn nod. It's a comfort to know there are still a few true knights left in the world. While scanning the bustling crowds near the lists for any sign of Egg, Dunk finally got a clear view of Sir Tomard Heddle. The man was a mountain of muscle, barrel-chested and broad, encased in black plate over boiled leather. His helm was a grotesque masterpiece, crafted to resemble a slavering, scaled demon. His destrier was a monster of a horse, standing 3 hands taller than thunder and armored in a heavy coat of ringmail. All that iron slowed the beast to a canter on his run, but it didn't stop Heddle from making quick work of Sir Clarence Charlton. As Charlton was carried off the field on a litter, Heddle removed his demonic helm, revealing a broad, bald head and a square black beard. Angry, festering boils marked his cheek and neck. Dunk knew that face. This was the knight who had growled at him in the bedchamber for touching the dragon's egg, the man with the deep voice he'd overheard speaking with Lord Peake. A flood of half-remembered words rushed back. "A beggar's feast you've laid before us. Is the boy his father's son? Bittersteel. We need the sword." Old Milkblood expects, and that question, repeated like a grim chant, "Is the boy his father's son?" I promise you, Bloodraven is not off dreaming. His eyes darted to the viewing stand, half expecting to see Egg somehow seated among the nobles. The boy was nowhere in sight. Strangely, Lord Butterwell and Lord Frey were also absent, though Butterwell's wife remained in her seat, looking profoundly bored. That's odd, Dunk thought. This was Butterwell's castle, his wedding celebration, and Frey was the bride's father. The joust was in their honor. Where else would they be? "Sir Uthor Underleaf," the herald's voice boomed. A cloud passed over the sun, casting a sudden shadow across Dunk's face. "Sir Themor of House Bulwer, the Old Ox, a knight of Black Crown. Come forth and prove your valor." The Old Ox was a fearsome sight in blood-red armor, black bull's horns rising from his helm. He needed a burly squire's help to mount his horse, however, and the constant turning of his head as he rode confirmed Sir Maynard's suspicion about his failing eyesight. The crowd gave him a hearty cheer as he took the field. Sir Uthor, the snail, received no such fanfare, which likely suited him just fine. The first pass saw only glancing blows. On the second, the old ox's lance shattered against the snail's shield, while Sir Uthor's strike went wide. The third pass was a near repeat, but this time the snail swayed dramatically in his saddle, as if about to fall. He's playing a part, Dunk realized with a jolt. He's dragging this out to improve the odds for his next bout. A glance around confirmed Will, the squire, was busy placing wagers. It only then dawned on Dunk that he too could have placed a coin or two on the snail. Dunk the lank, thick as a castle wall. The end came on the fifth pass. The snail's lance, with a deft twist, slipped off the old ox's shield and struck him squarely in the chest, sending him tumbling sideways from his saddle. His foot caught in the stirrup, and he was dragged roughly 40 yards across the field before his men could stop the horse. Once more, the litter was brought out to carry another knight to the maester. A few cold drops of rain began to fall, darkening the old ox's surcoat where they landed. Dunk watched it all with a stony face, his thoughts consumed by Egg. A new chilling fear gripped him. What if this secret enemy, the one whispering in shadows, already has his hands on the boy? It made as much sense as anything else. The boy was innocent. If someone held a quarrel with me, he should not be the one to answer for it. Dunk found Sir John the Fiddler being armed for his next joust. 3 squires were fastening his plate and tending to his horse's trappings, while Lord Aelin Cockshaw sat nearby sipping watered wine, looking bruised and sour. Spotting Dunk, Lord Aelin sputtered, dribbling red wine down his tunic. "Why are you still on your feet?" The snail crushed your face. "Steely pate forged a strong helm, my lord. And my head is hard as stone, or so Ser Arlen always told me." The fiddler chuckled. "Pay Alan no mind. Fireball's bastard knocked him from his saddle onto that plump backside of his, so now he's decided he despises all hedge knights. That wretched pimpled boy is no son of Quentin Ball," Alan Cockshaw insisted. "He never should have been permitted to compete. If this were my wedding, I would have had him whipped for his insolence." "What lady would ever marry you?" Sir John replied. "And Ball's insolence is far less tiresome than your sulking. Sir Duncan, are you by chance a friend of Galtrey the Green? I must soon part him from his horse." Dunk had no doubt of it. "I do not know the man, my lord. Will you take some wine? Bread and olives?" "Only a word, my lord. You may have all the words you like. Let us step into my pavilion." The fiddler held the flap open. "Not you, Alan. You could do with fewer olives, in truth, inside." The pavilion felt close and warm. The fiddler turned to Dunk. "I knew Sir Uthor had not killed you. My dreams are never wrong, and the snail must face me soon enough. Once I've unseated him, I shall demand the return of your arms and armor. Your warhorse as well, though you deserve a finer mount. Will you accept one as my gift?" No, I could not. The idea sat uneasily with Dunk. "I do not wish to seem ungrateful, but if it is the debt that troubles you, put it from your mind. I do not need your silver, sir, only your friendship. How can you serve as one of my knights without a horse?" Sir John pulled on his steel gauntlets and flexed his fingers. "My squire is missing. Perhaps he ran off with a girl." "Egg is too young for girls, my lord. He would never leave me willingly. Even if I were dying, he would stay until my body was cold. His horse remains here. So does our mule. If you wish, I could have my men search for him." My men, Dunk did not care for the sound of that. A tourney for traitors, he thought. "You are no hedge knight?" "No." The fiddler's smile was all boyish charm. "But you knew that from the first. You have called me my lord since we met on the road. Why is that?" "The way you speak, the way you carry yourself, the way you act." Dunk the lank, thick as a castle wall. "Up on the roof last night, you said certain things. Wine loosens my tongue, but I meant every word. We belong together, you and I. My dreams do not lie." "Your dreams may not lie," said Dunk, "but you do. John is not your true name, is it?" "No." The fiddler's eyes gleamed with mischief. They reminded him of Egg's eyes. His true name will be revealed soon enough to those who must hear it. Lord Gorman Peak slipped into the pavilion, then, his expression dark. "Hedge knight, I warn you." "Oh, cease, Gormy," said the fiddler. "Ser Duncan is with us, or will be shortly. I told you I dreamed of him." Outside, a herald's trumpet sounded. The fiddler turned his head. "They call me to the lists. Pray, excuse me, Ser Duncan. We can continue our talk after I have disposed of Sir Galtry the Green." "Strength to your arm," Dunk said, as courtesy demanded. Lord Gorman remained after Sir John had departed. "His dreams will be the death of us all." "What did it cost to buy Sir Galtry?" Dunk heard himself ask. "Was silver enough, or did he require gold?" "Someone has been speaking, I see." Peak settled into a camp chair. "I have a dozen men outside. I should summon the guards and have them cut your throat, sir." "Then why haven't you?" "His Grace would be displeased." "His Grace?" The words hit Dunk like a blow to the gut. Another black dragon, he realized. Another rebellion. Soon another field soaked red. The grass wasn't red at dawn. Why stage this wedding? Lord Butterwell desired a young bride, and Lord Frey had a daughter whose reputation was less than spotless. Their marriage offered a convenient excuse for certain lords of similar mind to assemble. Most of those present here once fought beneath the Black Dragon's banner. The others hold grievances against Bloodraven's rule or nurse their own private ambitions and resentments. Many of us were forced to send sons and daughters to King's Landing as hostages to guarantee our loyalty, but most of those poor souls died in the great spring sickness. Our hands are untied now. Our moment has arrived. Eris is feeble. A scholar, not a fighter. The small folk scarcely know him, and what they know they dislike. His lords love him even less. His father was weak too, it's true, but when his crown was challenged, he had sons to fight for him. Baelor and Maekar, the hammer and the anvil, but Baelor Breakspear is gone, and Prince Maekar broods at Summerhall, at odds with both king and hand. Aye, Dunk thought bitterly, and now some clueless hedge knight has handed his cherished son right to his foes. What better way to make sure the prince never leaves Summerhall? There is still Bloodraven, he pointed out. He is not weak. No, Lord Peak conceded, but no one loves a sorcerer, and the gods curse a kinslayer. At the first hint of failure, Bloodraven's supporters will vanish like snow in summer. And if the prince's dream proves true, if a living dragon emerges here at White Walls. Dunk finished the thought. "The throne is yours." "His," corrected Lord Gorman Peak. "I am merely a loyal servant." He stood. "Do not try to leave this castle, sir. If you do, I will consider it treason, and you will pay with your life. We have come too far to turn back now." A steady, cold rain was falling as John the Fiddler and Sir Galtry the Green took new lances at opposite ends of the muddy lists. Wedding guests were already fleeing toward the great hall, cloaks pulled tight over their heads. Sir Galtry rode a white stallion. A wilted green plume topped his helm, with a matching one on his horse's armored neck. His cloak was a quilt of countless green fabric squares, each a subtly different hue. Gold inlay made his greaves and gauntlets shine, and his shield displayed 9 jade stars on a field of leek green. Even his beard was tinted green in the style of men from Tyrosh across the narrow sea. 9 times they charged, the knight in patchwork green and the young lord adorned with golden swords and fiddles, and 9 times their lances shattered into splinters. By the 8th pass, the ground had turned to muck, and the great warhorses kicked up sprays of muddy water. On the 9th, the fiddler was nearly unhorsed, swaying dangerously before righting himself. "A good strike," he called out with a laugh. "You almost had me, sir!" Soon enough, the Green Knight shouted back through the downpour. "I think not." The fiddler discarded his broken lance, and a squire rushed forward with a fresh one. The next run ended it. Sir Galtry's lance slid harmlessly off the fiddler's shield, while Sir John struck the Green Knight square in the chest, hurling him from his saddle to land with a tremendous splash in the brown mud. To the east, a distant fork of lightning split the sky. The viewing stands were emptying fast, small folk and nobles alike scrambling to escape the wet. "Look at them run," murmured Alan Cockshaw as he sidled up next to Dunk. "A bit of rain, and all these brave lords scatter like frightened mice. I wonder what they'll do when the true storm arrives." The true storm. Dunk understood Lord Allen wasn't talking about the weather. What could this man possibly want? Has he had a sudden change of heart and decided to be my friend? The herald climbed back onto his platform as a low growl of thunder echoed from the clouds. Ser Duncan, a knight sworn to Whitewalls in the service of Lord Butterwell. He announced, Ser Uthor Unclearleaf, come forward and show your worth. Dunk looked toward Ser Uthor just in time to see the snail's confident grin twist into something bitter. This isn't the opponent he paid to face. The master of the games had switched the pairing. But why? Someone with more influence than Uthor Unclearleaf must have intervened, someone Cosgrove respects far more. Dunk turned the thought over. They don't realize Uthor never intended to win. He understood in a flash. They view him as a genuine threat, so they've set Black Tom to clear him from the Fiddler's way. Heddle was already part of Peake's plot. He could be trusted to take a fall when required. That left only one man standing in the Fiddler's path, and then Lord Peake himself was striding angrily across the churned, wet field, his cloak whipping in the wind as he mounted the herald's platform. We are betrayed, he shouted. Bloodraven has a spy in our midst. The dragon's egg is gone. Sir John the Fiddler spun his horse around. My egg? How can that be? Lord Butterwell posts guards outside his door day and night. Dead, Lord Peake stated, though one managed to name his killer with his final breath. Is he pointing the finger at me? Dunk thought nervously. A score of men had seen him handle the dragon's egg the night before, when he'd helped Lady Butterwell to her lord's chambers. Lord Gorman's accusing finger shot out. There he stands. The bastard. Take him. At the opposite end of the lists, Sir Glendon Ball glanced up, bewildered. For a heartbeat, he seemed not to grasp what was unfolding until he noticed men charging toward him from every direction. Then the youth moved with a speed Dunk found startling. He had his blade halfway drawn when the first assailant locked an arm around his neck. Ball tore himself loose, but by then two more were upon him. They crashed into him, dragging him down into the mire. Others piled on, shouting and kicking. That could be me, Dunk realized with a chill. He felt as powerless as he had at Ashford the day they sentenced him to lose a hand and a foot. Alan Cockshaw pulled him back by the arm. Stay out of this if you ever want to see that squire of yours again. Dunk whirled on him. What are you saying? I might know where the boy is. Where? Dunk had no patience for riddles. Down the field, Sir Glendon was hauled roughly to his feet, held fast between two armored men-at-arms. He was caked in mud from the waist down, and blood mixed with rain streaked his face. A hero's blood, Dunk thought grimly, as Black Tom Heddle stood before the prisoner. Where is the egg? Blood trickled from Ball's mouth. Why would I steal it? I was going to win it fairly. Exactly, Dunk thought, and that was something they could never permit. Black Tom struck Ball across the face with a gauntleted fist. Search his saddlebags, Lord Peake ordered. I'll wager we find the dragon's egg tucked away and hidden. Lord Allen spoke softly near Dunk's ear. And so they will. Come with me now if you want to find your squire. There's no better moment, while they're all distracted. He didn't wait for an answer. Dunk had little choice but to follow. 3 long strides brought him alongside the lordling. If you've heard egg, boys aren't to my taste this way. Keep up. Through a stone archway, down slick, muddy steps, around a corner, Dunk trailed after him, boots splashing through puddles as the rain fell steadily. They kept close to the walls, hidden in the deepening shadows, finally halting in a secluded courtyard where the paving stones were worn smooth and slippery. Buildings crowded in on all sides. Shuttered windows stared down from above. At the courtyard's heart stood a well, encircled by a low stone rim. A lonely, forgotten place, Dunk thought. He didn't like the feel of it at all. An old fighter's instinct made his hand drop toward his sword hilt. Before he remembered, the snail had won his blade. His hand went to his hip, searching for a scabbard that wasn't there, and he felt the cold prick of a blade against the small of his back. Try anything, and I'll carve out a kidney for Butterwell's kitchen. They can serve it at the feast. The knife point pressed harder, piercing the damp leather of his jerkin. Move toward the well. Slowly, sir. If this man had harmed Egg, thrown him into that dark water, then no little blade would be enough to save him now. Dunk walked forward a slow, deliberate pace, feeling a hot anger begin to simmer deep within. The pressure at his back eased. "You may turn around now, Hedge Knight." Dunk turned. "My lord, is this about the egg?" "No, this is about the dragon. Did you imagine I would just stand aside and let you take him?" Sir Alan's face twisted with disgust. "I was a fool to trust that miserable snail to finish you. I'll be having every coin of my gold back." Him, Dunk stared. This soft, pale, perfumed noble was the hidden enemy who'd been plotting against him. He wasn't sure whether to laugh outright or simply weep. Sir Uthor earned his pay. My head is harder than most, that's all. So it appears, step back. Dunk took one step backward, again, and again, once more. Another step, and the cold, rough stones of the well's rim were hard against his spine. "Sit on the edge. You're not afraid of getting wet, are you? You can't possibly get any wetter than you are." "I don't know how to swim." Dunk let his hand rest against the well. The stones were slick. One shifted slightly under the weight of his palm. "What a pity. Will you jump, or shall I encourage you?" Dunk looked down. The water below, a good 20 feet down, showed the endless ripple of falling rain. The walls were greasy with dark green algae. "I never did anything to you, and you never will. Daemon is mine. I will command his Kingsguard. You aren't fit for a white cloak." "I never said I was." "Daemon." The name echoed. Not John. Daemon for his father. Dunk the Lunk thick as a castle wall. Daemon Blackfire had 7 sons. 2 died on the Redgrass field, twins, Aegon and Aemon. Stupid, cruel bullies, just like you. When we were boys, they delighted in tormenting me and Daemon both. I wept when Bittersteel took him across the sea, and I wept again when Lord Peake said he was returning. But then he saw you on the road and forgot I ever existed. Cockshaw jabbed the air with his dagger. "You can go into the water as you are, or you can go in bleeding. Choose." Dunk's fingers closed around the loose stone. It was tighter in its setting than he'd hoped. Before he could work it free, Sir Alan lunged. Dunk twisted, and the blade meant for his ribs sliced a deep line through the muscle of his left arm. Then the stone came loose in his hand. Dunk drove it into the lordling's face and felt teeth give way under the impact. "The well, you said?" He struck again, a brutal smash to the mouth, then dropped the stone, seized Cockshaw's wrist, and twisted until bone snapped and the dagger rang on the wet ground. "After you, my lord." Shifting his weight, Dunk hauled on the man's arm and drove his boot into the small of his back. Lord Alan pitched forward into the well with a loud splash. "Well done, sir." Dunk spun around. Through the curtain of rain, he could only make out a hooded figure and a single pale white eye. It wasn't until the man stepped closer that the face under the cowl resolved into the familiar, weary features of Sir Maynard Plum, the pale eye merely the moonstone brooch fastening his cloak. From the well, Lord Alan's thrashing and cries grew frantic. "Murder? Help me!" "He meant to kill me," Dunk said, his voice oddly calm. "That would explain the blood," Sir Maynard observed dryly. "Blood?" Dunk looked down. His left arm was crimson from shoulder to elbow. The soaked fabric of his tunic stuck to the wound.
Oh.
He didn't recall falling, but the ground was suddenly against his back, the cold rain washing over his face. He could still hear Lord Allen's weakening whimpers from the well, the splashes growing fainter. "We need to bind that arm," Sir Maynard said, sliding a shoulder under him. "Up. Now, I can't lift you alone. Use your legs." Dunk pushed with his legs. "Lord Allen, he's going to drown," someone said, but the voice held no urgency. "He won't be missed, certainly not by the fiddler." "He is not," Dunk choked out, his face white with agony. "A fiddler? No. He is Daemon of House Blackfire, who would call himself the second of his name if he ever seized the throne. You'd be amazed how many nobles prefer a king who is bold and foolish. Daemon is young, handsome, and cuts a fine figure on horseback." From the well came only the faintest fading sounds. "Should we not toss a rope down to the Lord, rescue him now only to have him executed later?" "I think not. Let him feast on the fate he intended for you. Here, lean on me." Plume helped him across the yard. Up close, there was something unsettling about Sir Maynard's face. The more Dunk stared, the less distinct the man's features seemed. "I did advise you to run, if you recall, but you valued your honor above your life. An honorable death is one thing, but when the life in jeopardy belongs to another, how does that change the calculation? Would your answer remain the same, sir? Whose life?" A final weak splash echoed from the well's depths. "Egg? Are you speaking of Egg?" Dunk grabbed Plum's arm. "Where is he?" "With the gods. And I believe you will understand why." A new pain, sharper than the wound in his arm, twisted inside Dunk. He groaned. "He tried to use the boot, so I gathered." He showed the ring to Maester Lothar, who brought him to Butterwell. The sight of it likely made Butterwell soil his breeches, wondering if he'd backed the wrong horse and just how much Bloodraven knows of this little rebellion. "The answer to that last question is a great deal." Plum gave a low laugh. "Who are you?" "A friend," said Maynard Plume. "One who has been observing you, puzzled by your presence in this den of vipers. Now stay quiet until we see to your arm." Keeping to the shadows, they made their way back to Dunk's modest tent. Inside, Sir Maynard lit a small fire, filled a bowl with wine, and set it to boil over the flames. "A clean cut, and at least it's not your sword arm," he remarked, cutting away the blood-soaked sleeve of Dunk's tunic. "The blade seems to have missed the bone. Still, it must be cleansed, or you could lose the limb." "It doesn't matter," Dunk's stomach churned, and he felt bile rise in his throat. "Not if Egg is dead. Then the fault is yours. You should have kept him far from this place." "I did not say the boy was dead, however. I said he was with the gods. Do you have any clean linen?" "Silk?" "My tunic, the fine one from Dorne." "What do you mean with the gods?" "All in good time. Your arm comes first." Soon the wine was steaming. Sir Maynard located the silk tunic, gave it a suspicious sniff, then drew a dagger and began cutting it into strips. Dunk swallowed his objection. "Ambrose Butterwell has never been known for his resolve," Sir Maynard said, wadding 3 silk strips and dropping them into the hot wine. He had misgivings about this plot from the start, misgivings that turned to terror when he learned the boy did not carry the sword. Then this morning, his dragon's egg disappeared, and with it went the last shred of his courage. Sir Glendon did not take the egg, Dunk insisted. He was in the yard all day, jousting or watching the matches. Peake will find the egg in his saddlebags regardless. The wine was boiling now. Plume pulled on a leather glove. "Try not to scream," he said, before drawing out a strip of steaming silk and beginning to cleanse the wound. Dunk did not scream. He ground his teeth, bit his tongue, and hammered his fist against his own thigh hard enough to bruise, but he made no sound. Sir Maynard used the remains of the good tunic to fashion a tight bandage. "How does that feel?" he asked when finished. "Bloody awful," Dunk shuddered. "Where is Egg with the gods?" "I told you." Dunk's good hand shot up and closed around Plum's throat. "Speak plainly. I am sick of hints and whispers. Tell me where to find the boy, or I will break your neck, friend or not." "The sept," Plum managed, his voice strained. "He is in the sept." Sir Maynard's smile was thin. "You'd be wise to carry a weapon." He looked Dunk in the eye. "Is that clear enough?" Dunk went first to Sir Uthor Underleaf's tent. Inside, the Squire Will was hunched over a wash basin, scrubbing his master's underclothes. He glanced up, annoyed. "Back again?" "Sir Uthor's at the feast." "What do you want?" "My sword and shield." "Did you bring the ransom?" "No." "Then why should I hand them over? I need them. That's not a reason." Dunk took a step forward. "How's this for a reason? Try to stop me, and I'll put you in the ground." Will's mouth fell open. He pointed a wet hand toward the corner. "Over there?" Outside the castle sept, Dunk hesitated. "Gods, let me be in time." His sword belt was fastened tight around his waist where it belonged. The heavy gallows shield was strapped to his wounded arm, and every movement sent a fresh pulse of agony through him. If anyone jostled him, he was certain he would cry out. He shoved the doors open with his good hand. Inside, the sept was shadowy and still, illuminated only by the flickering candles upon the altars of the 7. As was common during a tourney, the warrior's altar gleamed with the most light. Many knights would have prayed there for courage before entering the lists. The stranger's space lay wrapped in gloom, lit by a single flame. Dozens of candles burned before the mother and the father, while the smith and the maiden had somewhat fewer, and there, kneeling beneath the crone's shining lantern, was Lord Ambrose Butterwell, head bowed in silent prayer for guidance. He was not alone. The moment Dunk started toward him, two men at arms stepped into his path, their expressions hard beneath their helmets. Both wore mail and surcoats striped in the green, white, and yellow of House Butterwell. "Stop, sir," one commanded. "You have no place here." "Yes, he does. I told you he would come." The voice was Egg's. As the boy emerged from the shadows near the father's altar, his shaven head catching the candlelight, Dunk almost ran to him, to sweep him up in a fierce, relieved embrace. But something in Egg's tone gave him pause. The boy sounded more furious than frightened, and Dunk had never seen him look so grim, and Butterwell on his knees. Something is wrong here. Lord Butterwell pushed himself unsteadily to his feet. Even in the dim glow, his skin appeared pale and damp. "Let him pass," he told his guards. When they moved aside, he gestured Dunk closer. "I have not harmed the boy. I knew his father well when I served as hand. Prince Maekar must understand. None of this was my design. He will," Dunk said, though confusion churned within him. "What is going on here?" "Peak," Butterwell insisted, placing a trembling hand on the altar. "This was all his work, I swear it by the seven. May the gods strike me dead if I lie. He dictated the guest list. He brought this pretender boy here. I never wished to be part of any treason, you must believe that. My goodson, Tom Heddle, yes, he urged me on, I won't deny it. Married to my eldest girl, but I'll be honest, he was deep in this plot. He is your champion," Egg cut in, his voice sharp. "If he was involved, so were you?" "Be quiet," Dunk wanted to shout. "That reckless tongue will get us slain." Yet Butterwell seemed to shrink before the boy's accusation. "My lord, you don't understand. Heddle commands my garrison." "You must have some guards who are loyal," Egg pressed. "These men here," Butterwell said, gesturing weakly. "A few others. I've been negligent, I admit it. But I am no traitor. Frey and I had doubts about Lord Peak's pretender from the start. The boy doesn't carry the sword. If he were truly his father's son, Bittersteel would have given him Blackfire, and all this talk of a dragon, it's madness, sheer folly." The lord mopped sweat from his brow with his sleeve. "And now they've taken the egg, the dragon's egg my grandfather received from the king himself as a reward for loyal service. It was there when I woke this morning. My guards swear no one entered or left my bedchamber. Perhaps Lord Peak bought them, I cannot say, but the egg is gone. They had to possess it, or else the dragon hatches," Dunk thought grimly. Should a living dragon ever return to Westeros, lords and common folk would rush to follow whichever prince could claim it. "My lord," he said, "might I have a moment with my squire?" "As you wish, sir." Lord Butterwell returned to his prayers. Dunk pulled Egg aside, kneeling to meet the boy's eyes. "I ought to box your ears so hard your head spins around, and you spend your days staring at your own backside." "You should, sir." At least Egg had the decency to look ashamed. "I'm sorry, I only meant to send a raven to my father, so Dunk could remain a knight. The boy's intentions were good." Dunk glanced at the praying lord. "What exactly did you do to him?" "Frightened him, sir." "I can see that. He'll have raw knees by morning." Dunk kept his voice low. "I didn't know what else to do. The maester took me to them after he saw my father's ring." "Them?" "Lord Butterwell and Lord Frey, sir. Some guards were there too. Everyone was in an uproar. Someone made off with the dragon's egg." "Not you, I pray?" Egg shook his head. "No, sir. I knew I was in trouble when the maester showed my ring. I considered claiming I stole it, but I didn't think he'd believe me. Then I recalled something my father once said, repeating words from Lord Bloodraven, that it's better to be feared than fearful. So I told them my father had sent us to spy, that he was marching here with an army, and that his lordship had best free me and abandon this treason or lose his head." A faint, hesitant smile touched his lips. "It worked better than I expected, sir." Dunk fought the urge to grab the boy and shake him senseless. This wasn't some mummer's farce, it was a deadly serious game. Did Lord Frey hear all this too? Yes. He wished Lord Butterwell joy in his marriage and said he was leaving for the twins at once. That's when his lordship brought us here to pray. Free could run, Dunk realized, but Butterwell was trapped. Sooner or later, he'd start wondering why Prince Maekar and his army hadn't arrived. If Lord Peake learns you're in the castle. The sept's doors burst open with a crash. Dunk turned to see Black Tom Heddle scowling in his mail and plate, rainwater streaming from his soaked cloak to pool at his feet. A dozen men-at-arms flanked him, armed with spears and axes. A flash of lightning bleached the sky behind them, throwing stark shadows across the pale stone floor. A wet, howling wind made every candle in the sept shudder and dance. 7 bloody hells was all Dunk had time to think before Heddle barked, "There's the boy. Seize him." Lord Butterwell scrambled to his feet. "No, stop! The boy is not to be harmed. Tomard, what is the meaning of this?" Heddle's face twisted with disdain. "Not all of us have milk for blood, your lordship. I'll have the boy." "You don't understand," Butterwell quavered, his voice thin and high. "We are ruined. Lord Frey has fled, and others will follow. Prince Maekar is coming with an army. All the more reason to take the boy hostage." "No, no," Butterwell insisted, wringing his hands. "I want no more part of Lord Peake or his pretender. I will not fight." Black Tom looked at his lord with icy contempt. "Craven," he spat. "Say what you will. You'll fight or die, my lord," he pointed at Egg. "A stag to the first man to draw blood." "No, no," Butterwell whirled toward his own guards. "Stop them, do you hear me? I command you! Stop them!" But the guards stood frozen, confused about whom to obey. "Must I do it myself, then?" Black Tom drew his longsword. In one smooth motion, Dunk did the same. "Behind me, Egg. Put up your steel, both of you." Butterwell screeched, "I'll have no bloodshed in this sept. Sir Tomard, this man is the prince's sworn shield." "You're a dead man." Black Tom snarled, his grin sharp and mocking. "Only if he trips and lands on me," Dunk shot back, bracing himself. "I've seen him ride in a tourney." He tightened his grip on his sword. "I'm more dangerous with a blade." Heddle just snorted and lunged forward. Dunk shoved Egg clear and raised his shield to meet the attack. The first clash sent a shock of pain screaming up his arm from his bandaged wound. He swung back at Heddle's head, but Black Tom danced aside and came at him again. Dunk barely got the shield up in time. Splinters of pine flew as Heddle laughed, driving him back with a furious series of cuts high and low. Each block was pure torment, and Dunk felt himself retreating step by step. "Take him, sir," Egg's voice rang out. "He's right there, sir." The coppery taste of blood filled Dunk's mouth, and a fresh wetness spread beneath his bandages. His head swam. Black Tom's sword was reducing the long shield to kindling. "Oak and iron guard me well," he thought desperately, then remembered this was just pine. When his back hit the cold stone of an altar, he stumbled to one knee, trapped. "You're no true knight," Black Tom taunted. "Are those tears I see, you great oaf?" They were tears of pain and rage. Dunk heaved himself up and drove forward, using his shield like a battering ram. Black Tom staggered back but kept his feet. Dunk pressed the attack, bowling into him again and again, using his greater size to slam Heddle across the sept floor. Then he swept the shattered shield aside and brought his longsword around in a fierce arc. Steel sheared through wool and bit deep into Heddle's thigh. The man screamed, his own return swing wild and panicked. Dunk caught it on what remained of his shield and put his whole weight into a final brutal thrust. Black Tom stumbled back, his eyes wide with horror as he stared at his own severed forearm lying beneath the stranger's stone feet. You, he gurgled. "I did warn you," Dunk said, and ended it with a thrust to the throat. 2 of the men-at-arms bolted back into the downpour, the others gripped their spears, wavering, their eyes darting between Dunk and their lord. Lord Butterwell finally found his voice, pale and shaken. This is a disaster." He turned to Dunk and Egg. "We must be away from Whitewalls before those runners carry word to Gorman Peak. He has more allies here than I. The postern in the north wall, we go that way. Now, hurry." Dunk slammed his sword home. Egg, you go with Lord Butterwell. He pulled the boy close, his voice dropping to a murmur. Don't linger with him. Once you're clear, give Rain his head and don't look back. His lordship has a knack for shifting allegiances. Head for Maidenpool. It's nearer than the capital. What of you, sir? Don't worry about me. I'm your squire. Aye, said Dunk, and you'll heed my command or you'll feel the back of my hand. A cluster of men were departing the great hall, pausing to pull up their hoods against the weather. The old ox and a tipsy Lord Caswell gave Dunk a wide berth. Sir Mortimer Boggs offered a long, curious look, but said nothing. Uthor Underleaf, however, had no such reservations. He was pulling on his gloves as he spoke. You arrived late to the festivities, sir, and armed again, I see. You'll have your coin for the sword if that's your only worry, Dunk said. He'd left his ruined shield behind and draped his cloak to hide the fresh blood on his arm. Unless I die, then you have my permission to pick my pockets. Sir Uthor chuckled. Is that bravery I detect, or mere foolishness? The two often smell the same, in my experience. My offer still stands, you know. It's later than you know, Dunk replied, his voice low and final. A cold certainty had settled over him. Cutting through the pain, a knight's path was often walked alone, and his own stretched out into the rainy dark. He did not linger for Underleaf's reply, shoving past him and through the double doors. The great hall was thick with the scents of ale, wood smoke, and damp wool. From the gallery, a handful of musicians offered a soft melody. Raucous laughter spilled from the high tables where Sir Kirby Pym and Sir Lucas Nayland were deep in a drinking contest. Upon the dais, Lord Peake conversed intently with Lord Costain, while Ambrose Butterwell's new bride sat alone and forgotten in her place of honor. Below the salt, Dunk discovered Sir Kyle attempting to wash his troubles away with Lord Butterwell's ale. His trencher held a congealed stew of yesterday's leftovers, what the pot shops of King's Landing would call a bowl o' brown. Sir Kyle clearly had no appetite for it. The untouched stew had gone cold, a slick of grease shimmering on its surface. Dunk slid onto the bench beside him. Sir Kyle, the cat gave a weary nod. Sir Duncan, care for some ale? No, ale was the last thing he required. Are you ill, sir? Forgive me, but you seem better than I feel. What became of Glendon Ball? They dragged him down to the dungeons. Sir Kyle shook his head slowly. Whore's son or not, that lad never struck me as a thief. He isn't one. Sir Kyle squinted at him. Your arm? How did a dagger? Dunk turned his gaze toward the dais, his expression darkening. He had cheated death twice in a single day. For most men that would be enough. Dunk the Lunk, thick as a castle wall. He stood up abruptly. Your Grace? He called out. Men at nearby benches set down their spoons, their conversations faltering as they turned to look. Your Grace, Dunk repeated louder this time. He strode up the Myrish carpet toward the raised platform. Damon. Now half the hall fell silent. At the high table, the man who called himself the fiddler turned with a practiced smile. He had chosen a purple tunic for the feast, Dunk noted, purple, to make his eyes seem all the more vivid. Sir Duncan, I'm glad you have joined us. What do you require? Justice, Dunk stated firmly, for Glendon Ball. The name reverberated off the stone walls, and for a fleeting moment, every soul in the hall seemed frozen. Then Lord Costain slammed a fist on the table and roared, that one deserves death, not justice. A chorus of voices rose in agreement, and Sir Harbert Pygie proclaimed, he's bastard born. All bastards are thieves or worse. Blood will tell. For a heartbeat, Dunk felt utterly alone. But then Sir Kyle the cat hauled himself to his feet, swaying just a little. The boy may be a bastard, my lords, but he's Fireball's bastard, just as Sir Harbert said. Blood will tell. Damon's brow furrowed. No one honors Fireball more than I, he said, his tone almost wounded. I refuse to believe this false knight is his blood. He stole the dragon's egg and killed 3 good men in the process. He stole nothing and killed no one, Dunk insisted, a new, sharp edge of sarcasm cutting through his earlier solemnity. If 3 men are dead, then perhaps you should question the company you keep. Your Grace knows as well as I that Sir Glendon was in the yard all day, riding tilt after tilt. True, Damon conceded. I wondered at that myself. But the dragon's egg was discovered among his belongings. Was it? Where is it now? Lord Gorman Peak rose, his gaze cold and commanding. It is safe and well guarded. And why is that any concern of yours, sir? Bring it out, said Dunk. I'd like another look at it, my lord. The other night, I only saw it for a moment. Peak's eyes narrowed to slits. Your Grace, he said to Damon, it occurs to me that this hedge knight arrived at Whitewalls with Sir Glendon uninvited. He may well be part of this scheme. Dunk brushed the accusation aside. Your Grace, the dragon's egg Lord Peak claims to have found was placed there by his own hand. Let him produce it, if he can. Examine it yourself. I'll wager it's nothing but a painted stone. The hall erupted into bedlam. 100 voices clamored at once, and a dozen knights sprang to their feet. Damon looked suddenly young and uncertain, as lost as Sir Glendon had appeared under accusation. Are you drunk, my friend? Dunk thought. I wish I were. I've lost some blood, Dunk admitted, but not my mind. Sir Glendon has been falsely accused. Why? Damon asked, confused. If Ball is innocent, as you claim, why would his lordship lie and try to prove it with a painted stone? To clear him from your way. His lordship purchased your other opponents with gold and promises, but Ball could not be bought. The fiddler's face reddened. That is a lie. It is the truth. Send for Sir Glendon and hear it from his own lips. I intend to. Lord Peak, have the knight brought here immediately, and fetch the dragon's egg as well. I wish to examine it more closely. Gorman Peak shot Dunk a look of pure hatred. Your Grace, the boy is being questioned. A few more hours, and I have no doubt we will have a confession for you. By questioned, my lord means tortured, Dunk stated flatly. A few more hours, and Sir Glendon will confess to having slain your Grace's father, and both your brothers besides. Enough. Lord Peak's face darkened to a deep purple. One more word, and I will tear your tongue from your mouth. You lie, said Dunk. That's 2 words? And you will regret them both, Peak vowed. Seize this man and chain him in the dungeons. No. Damon's voice was low and dangerous. I want the truth of this matter. Sunderland, Veerwell, Smallwood, take your men and go find Sir Glendon in the dungeons. Bring him here at once, and ensure no further harm comes to him. If anyone tries to stop you, tell them you are on the king's business. As you command, Lord Veerwell replied. I will settle this as my father would, the fiddler declared. Sir Glendon stands accused of grave crimes. As a knight, he has the right to defend himself by combat. I shall face him in the lists, and let the gods decide guilt or innocence. Hero's blood or whore's blood, Dunk thought as 2 of Lord Veerwell's men deposited a naked and battered Sir Glendon at his feet. He has considerably less of it now than he did before. The boy had been brutally beaten. His face was a mask of bruises and swelling, several teeth were shattered or gone, his right eye wept blood, and angry, cracked burns from hot irons marred his chest. You're safe now, murmured Sir Kyle. There's no one here but hedge knights, and the gods know we're a harmless bunch. Damon had given them the maester's quarters, ordering them to tend to Sir Glendon's injuries and prepare him for the lists. Dunk saw that 3 fingernails had been ripped from Ball's left hand as he washed the blood from the boy's face, a sight that troubled him more than all the other wounds. Can you grip a lance? A lance? Blood and spit trickled from Sir Glendon's mouth when he tried to speak. Do I still have all my fingers? 10, said Dunk, but only 7 fingernails. Ball gave a weak nod. Black Tony meant to cut my fingers off, but he was called away. Is he the one I'm to fight? No, I dealt with him. That brought a faint smile to his lips. Someone had to. You're to joust against the fiddler, but his true name. Is Damon? Yes, they told me. The Black Dragon? Sir Glendon let out a pained laugh. My father died for him. I would have served him willingly. I would have fought for him, killed for him, died for him, but I could not lose for him. He turned his head and spat out a fragment of tooth. Might I have some wine? Sir Kyle, the wineskin. The boy drank deeply, then wiped his mouth. Look at me. I'm trembling like a frightened child. Dunk frowned. Can you still ride? Help me clean up. "And bring me my shield, my lance, and my saddle," Ser Glendon said, his voice gaining a shred of its old steel, "and you will see exactly what I can do." It was nearly dawn before the rain slackened enough for the combat to proceed. The castle yard was a treacherous bog of soft, gleaming mud under the flickering light of 100 torches. Beyond the field, a gray mist was rising, its ghostly tendrils creeping up the pale stone walls to clutch at the castle battlements. The viewing stand was sparser now, many of the wedding guests having drifted away in the long hours since the feast. Those who remained climbed back onto the rain-damp pine planks, their chatter a low murmur against the coming dawn. Sir Gorman Peake stood amongst them, a cluster of lesser lords and household knights at his shoulders like a living cloak. Dunk's hands moved with a familiar, almost forgotten rhythm as he attended to Ser Glendon. It had not been so many years since he'd performed these same tasks for old Sir Arlen, and the memory guided his fingers as he tightened buckles on the ill-fitting armor, secured the helm, and helped the young knight mount. The shield he handed up was scarred from earlier bouts, yet the painted fireball still blazed defiantly. He looks no older than Egg, Dunk thought, watching the grim, frightened set of the boy's jaw. The sorrel mare was high-strung and unarmored, dancing nervously. It was a mistake to abandon his own horse. A rider's trust in his mount is half the battle, and this sleek stranger offered none. "A lance?" Ser Glendon demanded, his voice tight. "I need a war lance." Dunk moved to the racks. The war lances were stout things, 8 feet of dense ash tipped with iron, built for punching through armor, not for the showy strikes of a tourney. He selected one, his palm sliding along its length to check for flaws. Across the field, one of Prince Daemon's squires was presenting his master with an identical weapon. The transformation was complete. Gone were the fiddles and swords from his horse's trappings, replaced by the stark, 3-headed dragon of House Blackfire. The prince had even washed the black from his hair, which now fell to his collar in a shimmering wave of silver gold, catching the torchlight like polished metal. It struck Dunk then, with a strange pang, that Egg's hair would look just so if he ever let it grow. The image was difficult to conjure, yet inevitable if they both lived to see the boy become a man. The herald's voice cut through the morning damp. "Ser Glendon the Bastard, accused of theft and murder, comes now to prove his innocence with his body. Daemon of House Blackfire, the second of his name, right-born king of the Andals and the Rhoynar and the First Men, Lord of the Seven Kingdoms, comes forth to prove the truth of his accusations." The proclamation was a ghost from another field. In an instant, Dunk was back at Ashford Meadow, hearing Prince Baelor's calm voice before they rode out to fight for his very life. His hand moved almost of its own accord, slipping the heavy war lance back into the rack and plucking a tourney lance from the next 12 feet of slender, elegant ash. "Take this," he told Ser Glendon, thrusting it forward. "This is what we used at Ashford, in the Trial of 7. "The fiddler has a war lance," Ser Glendon protested, his eyes wide. "He means to kill me." "First, he has to hit you," Dunk said, his own voice surprisingly steady. "If your aim is true, his point will never touch you." "I don't know." "I do." Ser Glendon snatched the lance, wheeled his skittish mare, and trotted toward the starting mark. "Then may the 7 save us both?" he called back, the words swallowed by the growing light. A jagged fork of lightning split the pink-tinged sky to the east. In answer, Daemon raked his great black stallion with golden spurs, and the beast launched forward like living thunder, the iron point of his lance dropping into a deadly line. Ser Glendon raised his shield, kicked his mare into a gallop, and swung his longer lance across her neck to center on the charging prince's chest. Clods of wet earth flew from pounding hooves, and the torches lining the field seemed to flare brighter as the two knights hurtled toward each other. Dunk could not watch. He squeezed his eyes shut. The sounds told the tale. A sharp crack of splintering wood, a wordless shout, a heavy thump. No, the anguished cry was Lord Peake's drawn out into a despairing wail. No! For a fleeting moment, Dunk almost felt a twist of pity for the man. Then he opened his eyes. Daemon's massive black stallion, now riderless, was slowing to a confused trot. Dunk leapt forward to seize its reins. At the far end of the lists, Ser Glendon Ball turned his mare in a tight circle and raised the shattered remnant of his lance in triumph. Men were already rushing onto the field, converging on the figure lying motionless, face down in a churned-up puddle. When they hauled him upright, he was coated in muck from head to boot. From the crowd, a voice roared with laughter. "Behold, the brown dragon!" The courtyard of white walls echoed with uneasy laughter as the first light of morning touched its stones. Moments later, while Dunk and Sir Kyle were steadying Glendon Ball as he dismounted, a trumpet blast shattered the calm. Sentries shouted from the walls. An army materialized from the dissipating dawn mist encircling the castle. "Egg told the truth," Dunk murmured to Sir Kyle, his voice thick with disbelief. Forces had converged from across the realm. Lord Mooton from Maidenpool, Lord Blackwood from Raventree Hall, Lord Darklyn from Duskendale. From the Crown lands came the banners of Hayford, Rosby, Stokeworth, and Massey alongside the king's own men, led by 3 white knights of the Kingsguard and hardened by 300 archers of the Raven's Teeth with their pale weirwood bows. Even the formidable Lady Denelle Lawston rode out from the grim shadow of Harrenhal, encased in black plate armor, her fiery hair unbound. The new sun flashed on a forest of lances and spears. The somber banners of the night were now lost among a riot of colors. Dominating them all were 2 dragons on black, the great 3-headed red of King Aerys Targaryen, and a white dragon spewing scarlet flame. Dunk understood then, this was not Prince Maekar's host. Maekar's banner quartered 4 3-headed dragons. The single white dragon signified the king's hand, Lord Brynden Rivers. Bloodraven had come to White Walls. If the first Blackfire Rebellion died a dramatic death on the Redgrass field, the second was about to expire with a pathetic sigh. From the battlements, young Daemon Blackfire tried to rally his men. "They cannot intimidate us. Our cause is righteous. We will cut our way through and ride like fury for King's Landing. Sound the attack." His words, however, were met with muted whispers. Men began to edge away, seeking stables, postern gates, or any dark corner for shelter. When Daemon finally drew his sword and held it high, every eye saw it was a common blade, not the legendary Blackfire. "We will make this field as famous as the red grass," the pretender vowed. A grizzled old squire barked a laugh. "Piss on your famous field, you loot-plucking fool. I choose breathing." In a final, solitary act of defiance, the second Daemon Blackfire rode out alone before the royal army and issued a challenge to Lord Bloodraven for single combat. "Face me yourself, or send out your coward king, or name any champion you wish." He was met not with a duelist, but with a swarm of soldiers who dragged him from his saddle and clamped golden manacles around his wrists. His banner was thrust into the mud and set ablaze, the twisted column of smoke a grim signal for miles around. The only violence of the day came later, when a man in Lord Vorwell's service bragged loudly that he had been a secret informant for Bloodraven and looked forward to a rich reward. "Give it a moon's turn, and I'll be swimming in Dornish wine and warm company," he declared. A knight in Lord Costaine's retinue stepped forward and opened the man's throat. "Drink deep," the knight said coldly as the informant choked. "It's not Dornish, but it is red." What followed was a grim and quiet procession. Defeated men filed through the gates of White Walls to throw their weapons onto a growing, glittering heap before having their hands bound. Dunk walked among them with Sir Kyle and Glendon Ball. They had searched for Sir Maynard Plum, but the knight had vanished into the night like smoke. It was nearly evening when Sir Roland Craighall of the Kingsguard located Dunk among the prisoners. "Sir Duncan, where have you been keeping yourself? Lord Rivers has been demanding your presence for hours. You will come with me now." Dunk simply nodded and fell into step beside the white knight. Craighall's cloak billowed behind him, pale as winter moonlight. The sight brought back the fiddler's rooftop prophecy, a vision of Dunk himself clad head to heel in white, that same pale cloak streaming from his shoulders. Dunk gave a derisive snort. Right, and in that same dream dragons hatched from stone. Both were equally probable. The hand's tent stood a half-mile from the castle, sheltered by a broad elm. A small herd of dairy cows grazed placidly nearby. Kings might rise and fall with great fanfare, but cows and common folk just carried on. It was an observation the old man had often made. As they walked past a cluster of prisoners resting on the grass, Dunk turned to Sir Roland. "What's to be their fate? They'll be escorted to King's Landing for judgment. The common soldiers and knights will likely see leniency. They merely followed their lord's commands, and those lords? Some will earn pardons provided they offer full testimony and surrender a child as a hostage for their future loyalty. It will go far worse for those who previously received mercy after the Red Grass Field. They face imprisonment, loss of titles, or the block. The most culpable will lose their heads. Bloodraven had already begun that grim work. Before his pavilion, the severed heads of Gorman Peak and Blackthorn Heddle were mounted on spears, their shields propped below. 3 black castles on an orange field. The man who killed Roger of Pennytree. Even dead, Lord Gorman's gaze remained flinty and severe. Dunk reached up and gently closed the man's eyelids. "Why bother?" a guardsman asked. "The crows will have them soon enough." It was a debt. Had Roger not died that day, the old knight would never have noticed a gangly boy chasing a runaway pig through the streets of King's Landing. It all spiraled from some long-dead king favoring one son with a sword over another. And here I stand, while Roger lies cold in the ground. "The hand is waiting," Sir Roland stated. Dunk moved past him and into the presence of Lord Brynden Rivers, royal bastard, reputed sorcerer, and hand of the king. Egg stood before him, scrubbed clean and dressed in fine clothes befitting a king's nephew. Nearby, Lord Frey sat in a camp chair, a wine cup in hand, his unpleasant little heir fidgeting on his lap. Lord Butterwell was also present, though on his knees, his face ashen and his body trembling. "Treason does not become less vile because the traitor is a coward," Lord Rivers was saying, his voice cool. "I have endured your sniveling, Lord Ambrose, and I credit perhaps 1 word in 10. For that 1 word, you may keep 1/10 of your wealth. You may also keep your wife. I wish you both every happiness. And Whitewall's." Butterwell's voice quivered. "Forfeit to the Iron Throne. I intend to dismantle it, stone by stone, and salt the earth where it stood. In 2 decades, no one will recall it existed. Sentimental old fools and restless young men still trek to the Redgrass Field to leave flowers where Daemon Blackfire fell. I will not permit Whitewalls to become another shrine to the Black Dragon." He gave a dismissive wave of his pale hand. "Now crawl away, insect. The hand is merciful." Butterwell staggered out, too blinded by despair to even notice Dunk as he passed. "You have my leave to depart as well, Lord Frey," Rivers commanded. "We will converse further later. As my lord commands." Frey ushered his son from the tent. Only then did the king's hand turn his attention to Dunk. He appeared older than Dunk remembered, his face more lined and severe, but his skin was still bone white. The dark red birthmark staining his cheek and neck still resembled to some a raven in flight. He wore black boots and a scarlet tunic over which was draped a cloak the color of wood smoke, clasped by a brooch fashioned like an iron hand. His hair was long and white, falling straight to his shoulders and brushed forward to hide the empty socket where his eye had been, the one Bittersteel had torn from him on the Redgrass Field. The eye that remained was a vivid, unsettling red. How many eyes does Bloodraven have? 1,000 eyes, and 1. "I'm sure Prince Maekar had his reasons for letting his son serve as a hedge knight's squire," he remarked. "But I doubt those reasons involved delivering the boy to a castle swarming with traitors plotting rebellion. So tell me, sir, how is it that I find my own cousin in this den of snakes? Lord Butterwell seems convinced Prince Maekar sent you here in disguise to uncover this plot while posing as a mystery knight. Is that the truth?" Dunk dropped to one knee. "No, my lord." "Well, yes, my lord. That's the story Egg gave him. Prince Aegon. So that part is what was said. It just isn't the whole truth, if you take my meaning. I understand. So the 2 of you discovered this conspiracy against the crown and decided you would stop it yourselves. Is that it?" "Not exactly. We more or less stumbled into the middle of it, I suppose." Egg crossed his arms. "And Ser Duncan and I had everything under control before you arrived with your army." "We had help, my lord," Dunk added quickly. "Other hedge knights. Sir Kyle the Cat, Maynard Plum, and Sir Glendon Ball. It was Ball who unhorsed the fiddler, the pretender." "Yes, I've heard that story from what feels like half the castle already. The bastard of the Pussy Willows, born of a whore and a traitor." "Born of heroes," Egg insisted. "If he's among the captives, I want him found, freed, and rewarded." and who are you to give commands to the king's hand? Egg didn't flinch. You know very well who I am, cousin. Your squire has an insolent tongue, sir, Lord Rivers said to Dunk. You should beat that out of him. I've tried, my lord, but he is a prince. What he is, Bloodraven replied, is a dragon. Stand up, sir. Dunk rose. There have always been Targaryens who dreamed of things yet to come, long before the conquest, Bloodraven continued, so we shouldn't be surprised if a Blackfire now and then shows the same gift. Daemon dreamed a dragon would be born at White Walls, and one was the fool simply mistook its color. Dunk glanced at Egg. The ring, he noticed, his father's ring. It's on his finger now, not hidden in his boot. I have half a mind to take you back to King's Landing with us, Lord Rivers told Egg, and keep you at court as my guest. My father would take issue with that. I imagine he would. Prince Maekar has a rather prickly disposition. Perhaps I should send you back to Summerhall instead. My place is with Ser Duncan. I'm his squire. May the Seven preserve you both. As you wish. You're free to go. We will, said Egg. But first we require some gold. Ser Duncan owes the snail a ransom. Bloodraven actually laughed. What happened to the modest boy I met at King's Landing? Very well, my prince. I'll instruct my paymaster to give you what you need. Within reason? Only as a loan, Dunk insisted. I'll repay it.
When you learn to joust, no doubt?
Lord Rivers flicked his fingers dismissively, unrolled a parchment, and began checking names with a quill. He's marking the men to die, Dunk realized with a chill. My lord, he ventured, we saw the heads outside. Will the fiddler, Daemon? Will you take his head as well? Lord Bloodraven looked up from his list. That is for King Aerys to decide, but Daemon has 4 younger brothers, and sisters too. If I were foolish enough to remove his pretty head, his mother would mourn, his allies would curse me as a kinslayer, and Bittersteel would simply crown his brother Haegon. Dead, young Daemon becomes a martyr. Alive, he remains a stumbling block in my half-brother's ambitions. He can hardly raise a 3rd Blackfire king, while the 2nd still inconveniently breathes. Beyond that, a captive of such high birth would serve as a splendid addition to our royal court, a living symbol of King Aerys's boundless mercy and grace. Egg spoke up next. I have a question as well. I'm starting to see why your father was so eager to send you away. What else do you want from me, cousin? Who stole the dragon egg? The door was guarded. The stairways were watched. Nobody could have slipped into Lord Butterwell's private chambers unseen. Lord Rivers offered a thin smile. If I were to venture a guess, I'd say someone made their way up through the privy shaft. That shaft was far too narrow for climbing. For a grown man, perhaps. A child could manage it. Or a dwarf, Dunk interjected, the thought striking him suddenly. 1,000 eyes and one. Why couldn't a few of those eyes belong to the company of performing dwarfs they had seen earlier, jesting in the yard? The image of one squeezing through that dark, foul passage, driven by greed or some darker purpose, sent a cold ripple down his spine.